1,000 reading champions who have been instrumental in supporting teachers by ensuring that a culture of reading prevails. The successful implementation of this project has been achieved through building collaborative partnership with 10 key NGOs partners who were contracted by the National Education Collaborative, NCT. Honorable Chairperson, in pursuit of quality of education service delivery and in particular improved learning outcomes, the department has developed an induction program for all new teachers who join the profession. The new teacher induction NTI program is a product of collaborative effort of various partners in the sector, including the provinces of education, higher education and SACE, and the VVAOB. Through induction and mentoring support, new teachers in the basic education sector are supported so that they integrate and quickly adapt to the new school, are effective in their practice and teaching, and are motivated to stay in the profession. The NTI programs comprises two parts. Number one, the teacher orientation part is a short information sharing process that takes 1 week for a month. Number two, the new teacher induction and mentoring part is anchored on the SACE professional teaching standards. The new teaching induction program has been field tested in 3 districts of 3 provinces, that is Kenneth Kaunda in the Northwest, Ilembe district in KwaZulu-Natal, Thabo Mofusanyana in the Free State. The implementation of the field test was monitored and evaluated, and the draft report that provides findings and recommendations have been produced. In response to COVID-19 challenges, on an online new teacher induction programs have been produced. The number of bursaries allocated for the MTSF has been fluctuating due to the reduction of budget for the Funza Lushaga bursary. According to the 2022-23 financial year, the initial teacher education bursary milestone is 11,800 bursaries with a budget of 1.3 billion. The initial teacher education intends giving bursaries in line with the sector priority subjects areas, including the 3-stream model and requirements for the implementation and inclusive education. As the DBE, we support and adhere our programs to the district development model. The district development model seeks to improve service delivery through integrated planning, budgeting, and implementation under one roof through the development of one plan. And that is the plan that as a department we are following. As a national sector department, we have in this year, financial year 2022-23, prioritized the following catalytic projects and programs that will enhance the lives of the citizens within the district and metro municipalities. The implementation of the Accelerated School Infrastructure Delivery Initiative, that is ACIDI, targeting the building of 30 new schools, as well as the replacement of inappropriate structures. The implementation of the new school nutrition program to provide a nutritious meal to needy children in public schools across quintile 1 to 3. This will do working in collaboration with stakeholders at the local level to grow the local economy, as well as to enhance a local economic development. And the sanitation appropriate for education, safe, to provide clean running water to 50 schools through the ACIDI program and restore the dignity of school communities through proper sanitation facilities in 450 schools. The department's health promotion aims to create a healthy school environment by promoting the general health and well-being of learners and educators, addressing key health and social barriers to learning in order to promote effective teaching and learning. Educators and support staff that are infected and affected by HIV and AIDS are also supported through this program in order to guide the sector response and efforts to combat the spread of HIV, STIs, and TB. The department developed and distributed a policy pack comprising the DBE National Policy on HIV, STI, and TB for learners. The department, together with the Department of Health, continues to implement the Integrated School Health Program. In December 2021, the department gazetted a DBE policy on the prevention and management of learner pregnancy in school. The policy seeks to reduce learner pregnancy in schools and guide schools on the management of pregnancy whilst protecting the rights of pregnant learners in schools. Over 19,000 copies of the policy have been printed and distributed to all 9 provinces for further distribution to schools. Policy advocacy will be held with provinces together with consultation on the policy implementation plan. House Chair, the period 2020-2021 presented a great challenge as most of the sport and enrichment programs were suspended and cancelled due to COVID-19 restrictions. The restrictions in group gathering made it impossible for the extracurricular programs to be organized at national level as they are mass-based programs. The DBE is pleased to announce that the extracurricular activities have resumed since the COVID-19 alert level were lowered, with strict adherence, of course, to the COVID-19 regulations. Let me take this opportunity, Chair, to thank you for affording me the opportunity to thank the chairperson of the Select Committee and members for their unwavering support and guidance to the department. I want to thank our Minister, Angelina Motshekga, for her sterling leadership in the department, the Director General, who is leading the administration par excellence as far as I'm concerned. I want to thank our MECs in all 9 provinces and HODs and all the administrative staff of the Department of Education in South Africa. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maule.
A long way.
We will now proceed to Honorable Lutuli. Honorable Lutuli.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, EFF rejects the proposed budget on basic education. The South African basic education system is characterized by poor infrastructure, overcrowded classrooms, and poor educational outcomes, with the poor receiving the far end of the stick. The tragedy of our basic education lies in the fact that year in and year out, we stand here to lament about the same failures, and the department does absolutely nothing to address these failures. In fact, this department continues to miss its own targets of the improving learning facilities, and our education system continues to be characterized by inequality, which have remained ignored. This department is lagging far behind in developing infrastructure for schools as laid out in their own norms and standards for school infrastructure. We therefore reject the budget of that department, which year in and year out is responsible for the poor allocations of funds of rural schools. As a result, many rural schools are poor and disadvantaged, lacking basic infrastructure for sanitation, water, transport, electricity, and information and technology. Schools in KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape still face infrastructure challenges. The struggle with basics such as desks, chairs, classroom shortage, and well as inadequate toilet facilities. In Idujwa, there still exist schools which are made from mud structures, such as Jongilanga Senior Secondary School, which stands forgotten. In KwaZulu-Natal, children still walk more than an hour each way to get to school, to their schools. Hundreds of children still have to cross dangerous rivers to get to schools. This, despite the fact that this department is required to ensure that transport is provided to grade R who live 3 kilometers from the nearest schools. More than 500 schools were damaged in KwaZulu-Natal due to floods, but till today, there exists no indication from the department of their immediate plan to assist the schools that were affected. Rural schools make up a significant proportion of South African schools and schools districts, yet their needs are ignored and not taken into account. thousands of children across all provinces are taught by unqualified teachers, while the department drags its feet in paying teachers assistants who have been keeping the lights on our education system. There exists a shortage of teachers across the country, especially those who teach mathematics and science, yet the department is not doing anything to fill vacant posts. Minister, why is it that a child's experience of education in South Africa still depends on where they were born and how wealthy they are? Since the COVID-19 outbreak more than 2 years ago, the pandemic has increased inequalities as this department has failed its efforts to roll out visual learning for students across the country through television and radio programs, which were poorly coordinated and publicized and inaccessible to the poorest household who owns neither a television nor radio. Online learning, therefore, remains but a distant stream in South Africa for most students, as a majority of schools in South Africa are insufficiently prepared and resourced for online teaching. Where resource schools were able to adapt to the teaching and learning through online platforms relatively easily, as students from these schools were more likely to be from more affluent families and have access to technology such as smartphones, tablets, and personal computers connected to internet. Minister, the implementation of the right to basic education as set out in Section 29 of our Constitution is not subjected to resource availability. It is a right which has to be directly and immediately implemented. Infrastructure at government schools, therefore, needs to be improved to ensure that both learners and teachers have access to basic digital technology and internet connection. The department needs to facilitate internet access to all educational institutions, which would be a step in a right direction. Education needs to be delivered in a manner which accommodates the needs and circumstances of every learner in society equally. And finally, Chairperson, perhaps it is time to revise the legislative framework that gives provinces so much power in the administration of schools. We need a national standard that all provinces must adhere to. So, Chairperson, for those reasons, we reject this budget. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lutuli. Would have had to go to Honorable Nsube. I'm told that there's a bit of a problem, not unless Honorable Nsube is there now. There being a problem, we'll proceed to Honorable W.F. Kaiser Philander. Honorable Philander?
Sorry, Chairperson. Is Honorable Malika Amko. Can you allow me to stand on behalf of Honorable Nsube?
Okay.
Chairperson.
Please proceed.
Thank you,
Honorable
Chairperson.
Malika, yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to the Chairperson, Deputy Chairperson, the Chief Whip, House Chairperson, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Special and Permanent Delegates. Chairperson, the youth of our country are a reflect to the future of our nation. And it is true that the future are indeed the future of tomorrow. The generation of 1976 have bestowed upon us fruits of political freedom, but as the current generation, our struggle is for economic freedom. We want our education system to respond to this generational mission for the total liberation of the marginalized. Education is a key priority of the ANC government to empower the people for self-liberation from the shackles of bondage. Learning is a continuous process for any human life. We learn as infants in our childhood, we learn in our teenage age, and we also learn as adults, and so do those in old age. As humans, we all have the capacity to learn. The only difference is the relativity in our ability to learn. This is therefore means that our education system as a nation must be able to respond to the educational needs of all South Africans, in order for them to free and realize their potential and to create equal opportunities. Different cultures have reproduced their knowledge through various artistic means and in their traditional and cultural practices. We learn from our parents and we also learn from those we interact with in our surroundings. We learn from observation and teachings. Education is a systematic way of learning which is crafted to respond to different social, economic, and political imperatives. Formal education has been a practice in Africa, and Timbuktu in Mali is one amongst many notable evidence of formal learning in the continent. Colonization did not only impose its education systems, but also destroyed African knowledge development systems in the continent. Colonization has used education as a weapon to entrench the objective and its imperial interest. Quality education was preserved for the white minority in South Africa, while the African and Black majority received Bantu education and lack of access to various educational disciplines. Though education was systematically used to advance the oppression of Blacks, education also served as a tool of liberation. Literacy has also enabled the oppressed to assimilate different knowledge, which has aided the struggle against colonialism and the ability to disseminate information under repressive condition of apartheid. Today, education continues to respond to different social, economic, and political imperatives. The critical questions we need to ask ourselves is whether our education is liberative. We should ask whether our education system is producing the learning outcomes which embedded the values and socio-economic imperatives, which will realize the aspirations of the national democratic society. Our education system should empower our South Africans to realize their socio-economic rights and other human rights. The ANC government has placed education as an apex priority in order to deploy adequate resources in the education system to transform in it order to accord all South Africans the opportunity to access quality education despite their gender, class, race, or with different abilities. The ANC government has ensured the expansion of access to education, including inclusive education for people with disabilities. In 2010, government expenditure on education was at 6.1% of the GDP, which has been on the increase, which a total expenditure as a total of GDP was 6.8% in 2020. This reflects the continuous increase in allocation of education by the ANC government. In order to create a conducive environment for learning to occur for learners requires a societal effort, and it is not only limited to the role of government. If we are to improve the teaching and learning environment to help our learners to realize outcome which represent their potential. Honorable members, it is important to note interconnectedness of the influence of education and learning broadly in society. This places the emphasis of what the child learns at home, at the street, at the playfield, and at schools playing a role in shaping a child's cognitive development. It is for the reason that the primacy of the societal response to improving learning and educational outcomes becomes imperative. A learner who does not have support of learning, someone to help them, with homework, a guardian to ensure a learner has all the support. A learner who does not have support of learning, someone to help them with homework, a guardian to ensure a learner has all the support. A learner cannot perform like a student who has such support. Honorable Chairperson, the global capitalist system has led to rapid continuous transformation of production into different revolution as we speak about the fourth industrial revolution. The fifth revolution is already in motion. This honorable members signifies the ever-changing nature of the content and the form of educating as conditioning and development occurs. It is therefore important that our education system adapt its curriculum to include emerging disciplines in technology and innovation. This will be important to place the current generation of learners in our schools in a better position to participate in the digital and technological transformation. Honorable Minister, our focus on science and mathematics should be strengthened. Science and mathematics are important subjects to advance the socio-economic objectives of the country as they contribute to productive sectors of the economy and human capital, which with strong analytical and technical skills, which are important. The rising public incidence of racism continues to raise their ugly head in our society and also in some of our schools. Sexism and gender-based violence and femicide are becoming a normal occurrence in many households and communities. Our society is largely patriarchal. Our education curriculum is largely orientated to teach these values. These values we need to also promote local literature as part of our curriculum to advance the social capital of our local literacy. Honorable Minister, all these dimensions are some of the critical policy areas which we should enhance and adapt and adequately provide financial allocation to support the programs. The outcome of our education system are visible and for everyone. As in every community and most of the families, there is a child who has acquired a higher education qualification, and many children of the poor are able to perform at the same level as their counterparts with all facilities. As the ANC, we have called for the strengthening of system of the South African Council of Educators to act decisively on teachers who are found to be involved in sexual harassment cases. The teaching profession is not only a noble profession, but a seed planting profession, which has built the base of our nation human capability. We must enhance the professionalism in the sector. The African National Congress supports this budget as the vote will advance transformation of children and the youth of this country whom deserve the best facilities and equal education in order to address poverty and inequality. Many South Africans have seen how education can transform our society and livelihoods. Education can break the cycle of poverty. We support the vote. As Parliament, we will work with provinces and the ministry in ensuring the department delivers its objectives. I thank you, Chairperson.
Malibongwe.
Thank you very much, Honorable Malika. We will now proceed to Honorable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much.
Please
Thank you very
proceed.
much, Honorable Chairperson. 2022 represents the first time in 2 years that learners in the Western Cape, as well as the rest of the country, were able to return to school for full-time learning. This signals the beginning of recovery, and albeit later than we had hoped, the end of the rotational school schedule to prevent the further loss of valuable contact time. Honorable Speaker, in the chairperson, in the Western Cape alone.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Honorable Fernandez. Just a minute, just a minute. I now hand over the chairing to Honorable Ngwenya. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. In the Western Cape alone, we witnessed the impact that COVID had on the education system. For example, according to an education expert from Stellenbosch University, Nick Spall, the average grade 3 child in June 2021 knows around the same knowledge as the average grade 2 child of 2019. Even though there has been progress with the interventions to bring learners up to speed with the curriculum, one has to ask, what is the national government doing to improve the current situation and provide the Western Cape with the resources it needs to continue to provide quality education to learners? On paper, there are normal increases in the allocations which the Western Cape has received this year. All of the grants, with the exception of the ECD and life skills education grants, have been increased for this year. However, these increases are below that of inflation and will result in our province having less money in real terms to pay for the goods and services we need to deliver on. Honorable Chairperson, quality education for every learner everywhere has and will be the most important vision for any government, and in the Western Cape, we share this view. This vision is brought to light even within the constrained fiscal environment, and the WCED and the thousands of teachers, principals, and administrators make it possible for every child to have access to quality learning opportunities in a functional and enabling environment that assists them in acquiring the knowledge, the competence, and the skills in order to succeed. This happens by using values-based education to succeed in a changing world. The most recent example of this is that of Pinelands North Primary School and West End Primary School. These two schools are currently on the top 10 shortlist for the category Overcoming Adversity in the World's Best School Prizes, in which they are currently competing against schools in Australia, Malaysia, India, Uganda, Brazil, Jamaica, Kenya, and Nigeria. Soon, the top 3 schools will be announced where the winning school will win $50,000. But Honorable Chairperson, this is just but a taste of what the Western Cape is busy doing. As a province, we have increased our budget allocation for education to over 28 billion rand, which is an increase of more than 8%, an increase above inflation, if I may point out. The most notable component is the once-off education infrastructure grant incentive allocation of 105 million rand received for the 2022-23 financial year. As such, infrastructure development allocations to public ordinary schools and special needs schools have increased by 50.67% and 73.1% respectively. Chairperson, since the 2016-17 financial year, this department has built 72 new replacement and mobile schools. 41 of these schools were replacement schools. So as to address the backlog in the replacement of old structures built in the apartheid era, 10 schools were completed in 2021, and the department currently anticipates 6 new schools for completion this year. In Bottasig, Visantekraal, Nomzamo, Klapmuts, 1 high school and 1 primary school, and in Silver Sands. The reality is that between 18,000 and 20,000 extra learners join the Western Cape schools every year and have done so every year for the past 5 years. If the department only had to rely on new schools, then the province would have to build, furnish, and staff 18 to 20 new schools every single year. And that is before we even start to deal with the backlog from persistent underfunding, as well as the national norms and standards for infrastructure regulations, which compel us to build in a certain way and certain facilities. Chairperson, and given the number of learners moving to the Western Cape province, in addition to the 129 mobile classrooms delivered in the previous financial year, 173 more are in the process of being delivered. A total of 28 replacement school projects has been listed over the next 3 years. Another 97 vacant classrooms have been identified, and repairs will continue to accommodate more than 4,600 learners, and a further 11 learner transport routes serving more than 6,000 learners were approved for January this year. The budget the province gets, which is more than 90% funded by national government, cannot accommodate this rate. In fact, I hear that now after National Treasury already changed the provincial equitable share formula criteria for health, which will mean in the future we are getting less money in the Western Cape for health. The National Treasury is also now revising the criteria in the formula for education. Chairperson, further, the current formula makes no provision for special needs students. To put this into context, there were 20,325 learners in the Western Cape last year. The cost on schools to make provision for these learners is higher than ordinary public schools, but the province is left on its own to absorb the funding in this regard. Chairperson, it must be emphasized that whilst their respective school governing bodies can individually charge school fees, should they choose to, all 74 special schools in the Western Cape are regarded as no-fee schools in terms of funding. This year, the WCED has completed the transfer of the ECD centers from the Department of Social Development to the Department of Education, and 1.2 billion rand has been shifted in order to ensure the ECD program does so successfully. The department aims to infuse educational content and methodologies over the next 2 years into the sector. Despite the decrease in the allocation of the ECD development grant as received from the national government, this department aims to do everything in its power to ensure a smooth transition of this program. The grant will be split between 2 programs dealing with subsidies as well as maintenance respectively. Chairperson, as you can see, the Western Cape is pioneering and doing everything in its power to ensure that the vision of quality education for every learner everywhere has substance and is a reality. We hope that moving forward, the national government will work with us to further this reality even more. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thanks very much. The next speaker is Honorable K. Mshengu, KwaZulu-Natal Basic Education. Over to you, Honorable Mshengu. Mshengu.
As Chair, we are informed Honorable Mshengu has withdrawn from
Siakuba. Okay. The next speaker is Honorable P. Bushilo, Limpopo, MEC Education.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Good afternoon to you and to the Minister of Basic Education, Mayor Angelina Mutsecha, Honorable Minister of Social Development, Melindi Wezulu, Honorable Deputy Minister of Education, Dr. Jaina Mhaule, and Honorable Chairperson of Select Committee, Mr. Alec Nchabileng, Honorable members from Limpopo and other provinces, and also in the NCOPs, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and compatriots, Tobela, Rialoch. Chairperson, it is my singular honor and privilege to be participating in this debate on the Department of Basic Education budget vote as presented by our Minister of Basic Education. We welcome the budget vote as ably delivered by the Minister, and we want to indicate upfront that we fully agree with you that making progress in the basic education sector requires a continual focus on our long-term targets while taking into account agencies whenever they arise. One such agency came in the form of the COVID-19 pandemic, which was truly unexpected and unprecedented. It changed operations in the sector in as far as curriculum delivery is concerned, and the time we have lost remained unrecovered. The losses to COVID-19 in terms of personnel are still a traumatic experience to families and to us as a sector. The resources that we required, financial and otherwise, remains immense. Chairperson, I'm happy to also announce that under the leadership of the Minister of Basic Education and Minister of Social Development, as Limpopo were able to transfer ECD function smoothly before the 1st of April, in the last financial year. We're working together with the MEC for Social Development, Menka Karen Rahwali and his team, and they assisted us in making sure that the transfer was very smooth. We are still working together as a team, and in terms of our budget, we've also put aside some money to be able to put some infrastructure in our ECD, about 550 million to do that. Indeed, Minister, our overriding priority as basic education is to deliver quality basic education, and we've endeavored to do so to our learners in Limpopo. Our learners come first in all that we seek to do, and we cannot afford to be distracted from the job at hand, notwithstanding the challenges that we face from time to time. We worked hard at the height of the pandemic and continue to do so, fully aware that it will take some time for our learners to catch up in their learning due to COVID-19. We are also continuing to work very hard with social partners in the province, from teacher unions, governance associations, civil society, private sectors, and our communities to deliver the very best education under the current circumstances. The Limpopo Provincial Executive Council, under the leadership of our Premier Stanley Chupu Matabata, convened an education indaba, which was attended by various stakeholders. The indaba adopted an intervention plan, and stakeholders signed a pledge to support the department in the implementation of the intervention plan premised on 6 pillars: to enhance quality of instructional leadership, optimize teacher utilization, maximize delivery of strengthened support system, maximize provision of learner support services, strengthen assessment practices, and enhance efficiency on blended delivery modes. Chairperson, the COVID-19 pandemic also compelled us to accelerate our efforts towards embracing the 4th industrial revolution. In the last financial year, we announced a 2-pronged approach to be followed in rolling out the e-learning strategy. The first approach was successfully implemented through the launching of the Smart Classroom in 106 math, science, and technology schools, with the software that is intended to revolutionize teaching and learning in the province. Yes, the 2.9 national increase from last year's allocation for MSD, as announced by our minister, will surely add to what we must continue to do in this critical area. An analysis of the grade 12 results in these schools indicated that the performance of learners have increased by 5% in this gateway subject. The second approach is the provision of tablets to learners and laptops to teachers in selected schools in the province. To this end, 24,600 tablets for learners and 3,173 laptops for teachers in grade 1 and 8 have since been procured and delivered. In this financial year, a total amount of 312.7 million have been allocated for this program, and as more funding becomes available, the department will accelerate the provisioning of tablets and laptops to schools, prioritizing quintile 1 to 3 schools. These schools are also having the dignity of girl learners restored, as the department is delivering sanitary towels to indigent girl children. In the previous financial year, 34 million was allocated for this program, and in this financial year, an amount of 35 million have been allocated. As so far, over 195,000 girl learners are getting a supply of packs of sanitary pads, enabling them to attend schools every day without fail. In line with what President Cyril Ramaphosa indicated in his 2019 State of the Nation address, when he said, open quotes, "Our greatest challenge is to create jobs for the unemployed of today while preparing workers for the jobs of tomorrow. Our young people need to be given a real head start in the world of work, close quote. Informed by this injunction, we are in the process of resourcing and bringing back the glory days of our 8 agricultural schools in the province. We are working in collaboration with the National Department of Agriculture, Land and Reform and Rural Development in the province and also nationally to identify critical areas which will improve the implementation of this agricultural program in our school. The main aim is to train young farmers who will venture in the field of agriculture as one of the key economic pillars of the province. The department have also identified mining as one of the major economic activities sustaining livelihoods. The Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology, Dr. Blayton Zimande, and the Premier of our province, Ntate Chupu Matabat, have launched the Sekhukhune Skills Development Center at Aquaville section in Groblersdal town in Sekhukhune district. The construction of this center, which includes a mining academy, has commenced. The 3 mining focus high school that the department plans to construct in Sekhukhune, Mogalakwena, and Mopani will be feeders to this center. This will assist our learners in acquiring the relevant skills required by mining in the province. Safe and adequate infrastructure remains a challenge in our province due to budgetary constraints. In spite of all these challenges, we were able to complete 9 schools in our province in the last financial year, and in this year, we are also building more than 6 schools. The provincial government have allocated the department 200 million in this financial year in order to repair 50 storm damaged schools. This will go a long way in ensuring that we provide safe learning and teaching environment in our schools. Chairperson, we are also faced with serious challenges in our schools. Learners are becoming very violent and there is increasing bullying among them. Some learners even insult and assault our educators. We are also observing the increase in substance and alcohol abuse at our schools, and we have partnered with our parents, school governing bodies, teachers, SAPS, Departments of Health and Social Development in order to deal with these matters. One of the challenging factors also is teenage pregnancy. In the financial year 1 April 2020 to 31 March 2021, in Limpopo, 22,000 teenagers were pregnant and 3,000 terminated and 19,000 gave birth. What is most worrying is that the pregnant learners' ages ranges from 10 to 15 years, which constitutes statutory rape. As a sector, we will work with key stakeholders to ensure that those people who have impregnated these learners are brought to book. The other phenomenon which we are observing in our province is the increase in the rape of girl learners as young as in grade 1 and 2. This is a very serious issue and affects the mental stability of our learners. We have also noticed the increase in suicide because most of our learners, because of COVID-19 pandemic, also they suffer some mental illness and some can't cope with also bullying and also assault. This is very painful and psychosocial support is provided to the affected school learners and educators. Also, some communities still disturb learning and teaching times when they have challenges in their areas in terms of water or road. Schools are the first targets. In some cases, community will blockade roads to schools and close the gates and demand that the learners not attend school. There are also disturbances in terms of appointing our principals where other communities will refuse other principal, especially women.
They want someone from their community
to be able to deal with the matter. Also, some communities continue to ban our schools when they are supposed to be matched due to low enrollment. Instead of letting learners to attend the matched school, they resort to banning all school and refuse their children to attend the new schools. Mostly it's because they don't want learners to go to another school because they, as chiefs, they don't want the other one to go to the other chief's area. So they then invite the media and put the poor learners in the banned building to give impression that as government, we are ignoring and not taking them into consideration. The recent Rajek school that was in the media, The parents there bent the school, demanding that a new one should be built and not mesh. They were told that the school will be built in the 2022-23 financial year. 6 mobile classes were provided to them. They bent the 3 mobile classes, insisting that—
conclude, honorable member, conclude.
Yes, we are appealing to our communities to safeguard our schools and not vandalize and ban them, but also let learners be at school so that they can be able to receive the education that they deserve. We support the budget by the Minister of Basic Education, and it will go a long way in improving education in our country and in our province. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Honorable Bushilo. The next speaker is Honorable DeBrain, FF plus. Honorable DeBrain.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I welcome the fact that the Minister acknowledges the importance of developing the skills needed in South Africa from a young age. But unfortunately, acknowledging the problem and increasing the budget doesn't solve the problems that basic education are facing. Realistic steps are needed to be taken. Unlike the proposed Bella Bill that seeks to terminate the functionality and inputs of school governing boards and communities and placing it in the hands of the head of Department of Basic Education. Giving this department the sole power to determine language and admission policies in schools will be catastrophic because it will be used for political gain and not for the purpose of empowering our youth. Honorable Chair, we have learned in the past that politicizing education is not in the best interest of our learners. But then again, the past has also learned us that this ANC government puts itself above everyone and anything. The youth of South Africa doesn't need politics. They need decent schools and infrastructure, and they need quality education in a safe environment. They need a curriculum and standards that will empower them to uplift themselves in the future. But instead of addressing those needs, this department rather focuses on politics. Honorable Chair, last year when I addressed the importance of mother tongue education and how it will contribute to the empowerment of all learners, the Honorable Minister responded by saying that I was racist. This year, however, she herself is preaching the importance of mother tongue education and said that the issue must urgently be debated. And I fully agree with her in this regard, as the Freedom Front Plus has requested this debate on countless occasions in the past. So, Chair, through you, I would like to ask the Honourable Minister if she now also sees herself as a racist. Honourable Chair, the South African Institute of Race Relations has determined that state schools are altering the development of learners, and especially black learners, and that it is not as a result of the lack of money, but as a result of corruption, cadre deployment, and unrealistic policies. And if we look at the shortages of schools and classrooms, as well as the number of asbestos school buildings that still hasn't been replaced, and the thousands of schools that still make use of pit toilets, one can't wonder what happened to the hundreds of billions of rands that was budgeted for new infrastructure over the last 3 decades. Most of those funds ended up in the pockets of the politically connected and the tenderpreneurs, and this while the youth are the ones that are being left behind. And that is to blame on the current ANC government and not on the past. Honourable Chair, it is clear that this department is failing in its mandate to provide access to basic education for all. And it is also clear that this department is putting political agendas before the needs of our youth. And therefore, we as the opposition and the country as a whole has no faith that this department will utilize this budget in the best interest of our youth that is in desperate need of quality education. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Honorable DeBrain. The next speaker is Honorable M.N. Khatebe, Inkatha Freedom Party. Bungani.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, it is widely known that the COVID-19 pandemic exacted a heavy toll on the basic education sector in South Africa. We lost educators, support staff, and learners during the past 2 years, all while trying to ensure a continuation of successful graduates. Under these circumstances, any nation would find it difficult to ensure that their output of quality education is met, albeit not impossible. The impacts of COVID-19 also affected the business of teaching, especially in under-resourced schools. and communities where educators and learners did not have access to online tools to continue teaching and learning. This opened fresh wounds for the now parents who had inferior education under the apartheid government through inaccessible schooling. The report reflects these realities and the massive inequalities that prevail in this sector, informing us that, I open quote, in historically disadvantaged schools, around 70% of a year's worth of learning was lost in 2020, close quote. How are young people who have only had access to 30% of the schoolwork supposed to progress and be expected to write and pass the same exams as their more advantaged counterparts? As the IFP, we agree with the priorities listed in the report as approved by the Council of Education Ministers, but we are concerned about the realization of these goals. For example, they call for immediate implementation of a curriculum which skills and competencies for a changing world in all public schools, listing the fourth industrial revolution. How can we expect our local, rural, and township communities to adopt these goals with an already disadvantaged background? This department must prioritize taking the fourth IR to rural areas in collaboration with the GCIS and communications. Whilst we are all acutely aware of the challenges that this department has in bringing the fourth industrial revolution to rural areas, we must be appraised of a sound plan that can meet these challenges with an allocated budget. Moreover, there must be sufficient consultation with universities, TVETs, and CETA for a greater focus on literacy and content that will be taught using these tools. Honorable Chairperson, the devastating floods in KZN have added additional stress to the mandate of this national department and its provincial departments. This department is such an important component of state capacity building and development. All stakeholders, including the IFP, must not allow this department to fall into a state of irreparable decline. We have a duty to our communities to ensure that all children do not go hungry, can attend safe and conducive learning environments. We must attend to all forms of bullying with urgency and ensure that fellow students respect the learning environment. Honorable Chairperson, the IFP supports this budget. I thank you.
Thanks very much, Honorable Khatebe. The next speaker is Honorable M. Baha, DA. Honorable Baha.
Thank you, House Chair. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, good afternoon. Education has a vital role in empowering women, safeguarding children from exploitation and hazardous labor and sexual exploitation, promoting human rights and democracy, and protecting the environment that people find themselves in. Education is recognized as one of the best financial investments that the state can make. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa clearly states that every child has the right to education and safety. In a country like South Africa, where gender-based violence is a growing pandemic, we need education as a cornerstone of empowerment against such a trend. The government's continued reprioritization of funding for basic education flies in the face of the nature of a constitutionally protected right. The right to basic education, enshrined in Section 9, subsection 1 of the Constitution, is an immediately realizable right, is not subject to internal qualifiers such as the state's available resources or progressive realization. Minister, your department has a responsibility to recognize the importance of that right by availing resources to provide a fair and secured education system to all the children in this country. Before the pandemic, at least 4 out of 10 children in South Africa did not finish school. Each young person that drops out of school adds to the deepening of intergenerational poverty unemployment, and inequality currently affecting 3.3 million youth not in education, employment, and skills training. This is a specific reference to learner dropouts, which remains a huge challenge in our country. We therefore need to find ways and means to address this problem, which is what Honorable Gade from the Eastern Cape alluded to. And it would be great to see how the Eastern Cape works that one out. The recent floods in KwaZulu-Natal, the Eastern Cape, and Northwest pose an infrastructural challenge in the schooling system, with 630 schools damaged, costing the department 442 million to fix. This is on top of the 203 million in damage caused by the July unrest in KZN. Yet 1.6 billion has been cut from the infrastructure budget by cabinet over the medium term, which has already affected the existing infrastructural backlog of dealing with mud, dilapidated asbestos, and pit toilets in schools. This is occurring in a context where classes in many schools are already overcrowded. Teacher retention is also a major problem in South Africa and has only been amplified by the COVID-19 pandemic. More teachers are leaving the profession than are joining, and it is expected that this will worsen due to an anticipated retirement wave of teachers, which is likely to peak in 2030 to end of 2040. There's been no schooling at Sidiba Satuto Primary School in Mamelodi East, Tshwane, for 3 weeks because the parents have shut down the school due to overcrowding in classrooms. There are 74 learners per classroom, and the environment is not conducive to productive learning and teaching. It is unacceptable as learners are denied the dignity of learning in an adequate environment. We call upon the department to follow up on this matter with a matter of urgency. In the aftermath of 2 years of substantial loss learning time due to school closures and rotational timetables caused by COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the exacerbation of the sanitation and infrastructure crisis at many schools, the government needs to take deliberate steps to prioritize basic education to ensure that all learners are safe and will be provided with their constitutional right, the right to education. The early childhood development sector is not forgotten aspect of basic education in the country, grossly underfunded and undersupported by government, which with attendance at ECD centers below 50% even before the COVID-19 pandemic. Quality ECD is vital to support children's development and serves as a foundation for future learning in schools. Lack of opportunities and interventions of poor quality interventions during early childhood can significantly disadvantage young children and diminish their potential for success. Despite the government's rhetoric regarding the need for universal access to ECD programs, growth in funding is only 1.7% on average, which in real terms means funding is expected to decrease by 2.8% until 2024-2025. As with basic education, investment in ECD yields high returns and saves government money in the long term. This means that cutting funding in this crucial sector to save money and repay debt is counterproductive at its best. The lack of access to ECD programs negatively affects children's rights, such as the right to equality and education. Granting children access to ECD programs broadens their chances for success and wealth compared with children who do not. In conclusion, House Chairperson, Minister, we urge you to prioritize giving the children a complete package for a good starting in life. The children are the future, and teach them well and secure their future. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Honorable Paha. The next speaker is Honorable Ndongeni, ANC. Honorable Ndongeni. Honorable Ndongeni.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. Good afternoon. Chair, Chair, Minister, Deputy Minister on the platform, special delegate. Oh, sorry. Special delegates and permanent delegates. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Chair, to create a better life for all, the ANC believes that building an ethical and capable development state will propel such realization. A developmental state should have the capacity to plan, implement, and innovate. The capacity of the state is also enhanced by the human capacity development of the nation. Basic education plays a critical foundational base in the cognitive development of our children. It is through education that we can create equal opportunities for all South Africans. The legacy of the colonialism is evident in the partial distribution of the opportunities and development. The fact that Elena is a rural school is more likely to be in a school with a lack of critical facilities, such as sporting facility, libraries, halls, and laboratories, to name a few. While schools in urban areas have more facilities, the pandemic has resulted in learning losses that vary due in inequality. Learners with no access to digital platforms and support were left behind. Basic education are also even in our system. The district development model needs to be leveraged for coherent planning by the different departments to ensure that our schools have access to water, sanitation, and health services. Municipality services and developments need to ensure that our schools are located in a correct area spatially, and police ensure safety in school location in communities with a high prevalence of violence. This budget vote makes an important intervention in order to close the infrastructure gap through the Infrastructure Grant Fund. Funds from the School Infrastructure Backlog Grant are intended to provide schools with water and sanitation, and to replace schools constructed with the inappropriate materials such as mud. Over the medium term, 6.7 billion is allocated to the grant to build 30 new schools, provide water to 50 schools, and provide safety sanitation to 450 schools. These projects are set to be completed by the end of 2022 to 2023, after which the School Infrastructure Backlogs Grant will be incorporated into the Education Infrastructure Grant. Through the increase of in-schooling facilities, we will be able to address the learning-teacher ratio problem in our schools to meet the norms and standards in the best interest of the learner. We welcome the efforts of the department in this regard. In our oversight visit and constituents visit, we see the improvement being undertaken despite the backlog. This focus showed the progress being undertaken by the department. The president in his SONA announced the introduction of the special purpose vehicles to expedite the eradication of improper facilities and the building of the new schools. This is a welcome intervention as part of the economic reconstruction and recovery plan. Infrastructure focus, which includes social infrastructure. We welcome the efforts of the department to ensure schools focus on curriculum recovery, as this poses a significant impact on learners. Honorable members, food security in our country remains a challenge, according to a report released by Statistics South Africa, measuring food security in South Africa, applying the food insecurity experience scale. Almost 23.6% of South Africans in 2020 were affected by moderate to severe food insecurity, while almost 14.9% experience severe food insecurity. What opposition party will not tell South Africans that this budget vote supports the National Schools Nutrition Programs, a target 9 million learners each year over the medium term will be provided with a meal on school days. The program is funded by the National Schools Nutrition Program Grant. which is allocated 26.7 billion over the medium term in the Education Enrichment Services Program. Provinces are also required to ensure that meals are provided on school days when learners are not at school because of COVID-19 restriction. This contributes to addressing child stunting, which has a lifelong impact. We welcome the pilot being undertaken in the Eastern Cape on the use of the mother tongue-based bilingual educational strategy for mathematics, natural science, and technology. We need to build on those gains and expand this initiative nationally. The budget vote allocated over 420 million for the Maths and Science Technology Grant. We call on other provinces to adopt this approach as part of phasing in our African language for mainstream teaching and learning. Quality learning and teaching campaign, which mobilize stakeholders to play a role in promoting a culture of teaching and learning in schools in the important areas. The department should develop a plan to address. The department should strengthen the function of quality learning and teaching campaigns, particularly it should with numerous communities challenges. With a cooperative relation in the sector, risk of instability will begin to emerge. Honorable Minister, the social media videos and image of learning, smoking and drinking alcohol are a critical area of concern that requires a concerted effort from society and not just the department. The call for moral regeneration have not become more relevant in today's reality of alcohol and drug abuse, learner attack on teachers and their disrespect. Our creative sector are also critical influencers who are at times perpetuated this culture, which does not reflect the values of Ubuntu and respect. Honorable Minister, we need to focus on strengthening school leadership. Principals are important in developing school culture that promote the values of the Constitution and inclusive culture. Hence, the principal is a critical sharper of the outcomes of the school due to the leadership provided to create an appropriate environment of teaching and learning. We need to also focus on strengthening SGBs, as in other isolated instances, they become a cause of the collapse of stability in schools. The social contract with the people should also be anchored on the social duty, which is incumbent on those who had different leadership positions in our SGBs and broadly public institutions. Those who rejected this vote have no interest in our people at heart. You cannot reject a vote which is an instrument of transforming our society and liberate the oppressed and poor. The fiscal position of the country requires that the department should spend its allocated funds in a prudent manner without trace of corrupt practice and providing quality workmanship. Accountability and consequence management should be the response to identify areas of concern and act on financial misconduct. The ANC remains committed in the fight against corruption. The overall performance of the department will be considered in the fourth quarter report or the annual report to assess whether the department delivered on all of its targets. The African National Congress supports this budget vote to create equal opportunities for all South Africans. The legacy of the democratic government of the ANC in the realization of a social wage to address the injustice of the past. Our legacy will be strengthen the education system so that a child of informal worker and a domestic worker is today an archaeologist, a doctor, a chartered accountant, and engineering, and many professions which the democratic breakthrough has enabled, creating equal opportunities. The African National Congress support the budget vote 16. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable Ndongeni. The last speaker is Minister Basic Education, Honorable M.A. Motseha. Over to you, Minister.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm trying to open my video. It won't open.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Oh my goodness me. Just a second, my video won't open, Chair. Give me a second and see if it will respond. Oh, yeah. Chair, unless you'll allow me, so that I don't take too much of your time, you'll allow me to speak without the video. It just is not responding.
Okay, no, it's fine, ma'am.
Oh, yeah.
No, I
don't know what is happening. Okay.
Okay, Kuba, mama.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Chair. Let me also thank the different members who participated in the debate, and can say we sincerely take their advice and their counsel seriously, and we'll always make sure that any advice that we get, we do actually filter it or include it in the work that we do. Chair, just for the record, when I started joining Parliament, I was looking forward to engaging with opposition, thinking that as people with a different perspective will enrich this perspective. But now, almost more than 15 years into the process, I'm very discouraged. The opposition, if I know to learn about find a mistake, about find a finder. Nothing substantive, nothing helpful, about know it all, about Mr. Finder. And unfortunately for us from the governing party, don't have find a mistake games, about spot a difference. I don't think we will, and it's unfortunate that we do. We find ourselves in that. As the ruling party will continue to work very hard, including the Western Cape, to make sure that we will build a comprehensive, holistic education that is developmental, which will take our country forward. So Tina says, I'll go and find a finder. And also, Chair, it's unfortunate that people keep on saying the research says, you don't know which research by who. You must mention the researcher if you really mean, or you really mean something about the research. But we research just to throw words around and throw weight, it becomes unfortunate. Chair, I did mention in my speech that we've made public information on research enrollments, and I will be releasing the report soon. In fact, participation rates in schooling rose during the pandemic. So according to our recent released enrollment data, there has been substantial growth in enrollment in our schools, beginning already before the pandemic in 2019, and this growth did not slow down during the pandemic. In actual facts, it increased by 500,000 between 2019 and 2021. So we'll make that information available. The other fact I want to respond to, Chair, which I want to confirm, that indeed social class unfortunately determines, and which is very unfortunate, determines where we stay, with who we stay, and where we live. And as the governing party, that's why we've put together a full comprehensive package to protect our children who come from previously disadvantaged areas. Member Ndungani did mention that we don't get it, that we provide food, uniform. It's not accidental, it's deliberate and conscious in a way of protecting a previously disadvantaged learners, because we know that it has an impact. But what is also pleasing for us, Chair, is that in the past few years, we've seen the narrowing of the gap between kids who come from privileged schools and kids who come from highly privileged communities. We're getting distinctions, we're getting lots of good quality passes, even from that school. And that is very, I think that is very encouraging. Chair, it's always a pleasure, unfortunately, to listen to ANC people. I don't know, it's because it's an organization with principles, there's always content. I really have to thank Member Maleka, because again, you could hear that these are people who come from an organization that is driven by principles. I and be there to criticize and rubbish everything that people are doing. And I must say, the member from Western Cape, I really want to thank her for her contribution, because it's quite clear she talks about something that she knows. But unfortunately, as she closes it, she says she hopes that we'll work with DA. We're a very principled country. Kids in the Western Cape belong to us as a nation, all of us as adults. So there is no way we will prejudice them and say, because we're national, we will not work with Western Cape. Ask all your MECs. We've always worked very well because we respect everybody. I think there are other things I really don't want to comment about, that we should not bring apartheid in schools, as if apartheid didn't bring back to education. And even to talk about that in the June month, I think it's very unfortunate, where indeed apartheid landed us up where we are. We're not complaining, we're committed to do what we have to do to make sure that indeed we can protect our children. It is this governing party that brought the Bill of Rights to protect people against racism, against sexism, and also bring a democratic government. And now to have to say, will you say you're racist or not? I wouldn't be. Otherwise, I would not be a member of the ANC. It's unfortunate, but again, as I say, Chair, it is our responsibility to make sure that we work with everybody. Indeed, it is our responsibility, Chair, to make sure that our children's future is protected. It's not even in our interest alone. It's in the interest of the country. It's in the interest of the nation that we have to do the things that we have to do. And I hope one day, I think when the opposition becomes more patriotic, should, when we talk about the future of our children, stop bringing us stories which are not relevant, and then they all scream about, you find a mistake and look for black spots everywhere. That's not going to be helpful, Babu Bacha, to really go and look for where you can find mistakes and make it your speaking points. We're speaking about the budget, we're speaking about content. Address yourself to content and let's work together to build this country together. And I agree with Member Ndongeni. The social decadence in our country has become a big problem. And it can only be solved by us as a nation. Questions of drugs, questions of criminality, your teenage pregnancy, all those social problems are our problems as a nation, so that we should not be pointing at one part to say, hey, what is about teenage pregnancy? Outing bonge getting bonge kakhulu and bonge nethuba. No, I really want to thank you, Chair. And it's been very helpful, and we take their comments very seriously, and we'll factor them in the work that we do. Ngiyabonga, Sihlalo.
Thanks very much, Mama.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
I wish you to thank the Minister, Deputy Minister, MECs, and all delegates who participate in the debate. Honorable members, I would like now to call Honorable Nyambi, House Chairperson, to continue with the fourth order of the day. Honorable Nyambi. Okay. Meanwhile, I'm waiting for Honorable Nyambi. Honorable members, now we continue with our debate on the fourth order of the day. Honorable Delegate, I will now proceed to the fourth order policy date on budget 19 social development appropriation bill B7-2022 National Assembly section 77. Honorable members, I'll now call upon Honorable El Zulu, Minister of Social Development, to open the debate.
On silent
Honorable Zulu,
in order for this proceeding to occur succinctly.
Minister Zulu. Advocate Pindela.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Chairperson of the Select Committee on Health and Social Services, Honorable Gillian, Honorable members of the Select Committee on Social Health and Social Services, all NECs for social development that are present here today, and the following, I was informed, are in the House today: Honorable Lusiti, Honorable Kabate, Honorable Rahwale, Honorable Muyilwa, and of course we welcome Honorable Fernandez. I haven't seen her for a very long time. You're very welcome, Honorable Fernandez. Distinguished guests, ngiyanamukela nonke, ngiyanibingelela nonke emakhaya noma nikuphi lapho nilalele khona. I convey the apology of our Deputy Minister, the Honorable Henrietta Bokhopane Zulu, who is attending the 15th session of the Conference of State Parties to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that is taking place from today until the 16th June in New York. Thank you for the opportunity to present
the 2022-23 budget vote 19 of the Department of Social Development to the National Council of Provinces, our NCOP. At the absolute minimum, the diverse constituencies that entrusted us to carry out the responsibilities of being public representatives and members of parliament expect nothing less from all of us than behaving and conducting ourselves in a manner that protects the public's collective interest, as well as growing confidence and levels of trust between parliament and the public. I know the honorable members are asking themselves the question why I'm saying so. Refer back to my last speech in the National Assembly when I was responding for the President's budget. This public demands from each one of us to be the embodiment of respectability, integrity, ethical conduct, and accountable and credible democratic governance. The NCOP helps to bring the provincial nuances to Parliament's role. These expectations are particularly true in view of the need to attend to the needs of the custodians of the spring of vigor, enthusiastic aspirations, South Africa's future essence, that is the youth. And this year, as you all are aware, now in June, we are celebrating the gallant fighters of 1976. Theirs, and that is the youth of today, is the same untiring longing that, dating back to as recent as June 1976, gave birth to the democracy that we live in today, and that we must never forget. Likewise, as public representatives, we are best advised to sharpen our investments in youth-targeting socio-economic interventions. Faced with the novel disasters and shocks, the slowing global economic growth, domestic stagflation, COVID-19, the July 2021 unrest, and the climate change-induced floods in the Northwest, KwaZulu-Natal, and Eastern Cape. And the Eastern Cape province's challenges, we continue to witness South Africans coming together to form defense that protected and improved our collective lives and livelihoods. Working together with our provincial departments of social development, the department is leading the formation of purposeful and community-targeted people, public, private, civic, academic, multilateral partnerships, and social compacts that are attending to the well-being of South Africans during natural, economic, and social disasters and shocks. I urge all of us to strengthen these partnerships and social compacts in action into the future. While disasters and shocks may be uncontrollable, our responses to these phenomena should demonstrate people-focused planning. In this regard, I have directed the department to develop a disaster preparedness and response plan through which our capacity to reliably deliver timely humanitarian relief and assistance will be strengthened. Among others, this plan should be informed by the Weather Services data as well as geospatial data as proxies for human movement in affected communities. May I, Chairperson, honorable members, at this point in time also ensure that the Department of Social Development cannot do this work alone. The department, in focusing on issues of disaster, has to work in a coordinated manner with all other provinces. I stand here today, honorable members. Outside in Cape Town is disaster. It is cold, it is freezing, it is raining. So you can imagine what is happening to those people who are not as privileged as some of us are. We go back to normal homes. They don't. These elements define the backdrop against which the 2022-23 budget vote of the Department of Social Development is being presented to you. Working together with provincial government departments, our 52 districts and metropolitan municipalities, non-profit organizations in the social development sector, and community members, this budget is the pursuit of socio-economic reconstruction and recovery, people-responsive, cooperative governance towards inclusive economic growth and common prosperity. And common prosperity, honorable members, is not supposed to be for a few, but common prosperity needs to be seen to be working towards our people. It therefore stands to reason that this 2022-23 budget should embody the implementation of qualitatively improved and accessible social development programs that are reflective of the aspirations of the different constituencies and communities in our 9 provinces of which you represent. While these programs are targeted at the betterment of the state of our people and the communities that they live in and represent, it is the intentional and collective implementation of the range of social development programs that will translate into realization of meaningful society-wide impact. Informed by the State of the Nation address, our economic priorities through this financial year, the Department of Social Development will intentionally intensify its contributions towards interventions that purposefully address constant challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment through the following. 1, pursuing the twin policies of social protection on the one hand and programs that are intended at creating economic participation opportunities in the other. Doing so will ensure that while the necessary support is extended to members of society who are able to participate in the economy, no one is left behind and unsupported by virtue of their inability to compete in the market system. 2, attending to priority concerns such as tackling gangsterism, and we are in the Western Cape, fighting substance abuse and supporting families and communities who are affected by disasters, shocks, and emergencies in our communities. 3, expanding our support for food and nutrition provision, interventions, partnerships in pursuit of ending the pain of hunger, especially among children, while undoing the adverse long-term effects of malnutrition on human development and economic productivity. 4, continuing to implement and strengthen the socio-economic value of the COVID-19 Social Relief of Distress Grant among those who receive it, and thereby affording these beneficiaries a dignified life. 5, easing program coordinating, budgeting, and implementation within the social development sector across the 3 spheres of government through the cabinet-adopted district development model. And 7, stabilizing and strengthening governance and implementation capacity throughout the social development portfolio with a view to ensure that our programs are the embodiment of protecting the dignity of our people. I therefore go to the budget itself. Vote number 19 of the social development constitutes 13.1% of the government's overall estimated budget of 1.957 trillion. I repeat, 1.957 trillion. Our budget allocation for the 2022-23 financial year is a total of 257 billion, of which 248 billion is allocated as cash transfers to more than 18 million social grant beneficiaries every month. These include old age, child support, care dependency, granting aid, and foster care. This investment constitutes, honorable members, 99.6% of the department's total budget allocation in every community throughout our country. And I believe that we can still increase that when we look at the other budgets, when we look at SASSA. Of course, NDA is a stepchild so far. We need to do something better for NDA. Now I go to provincial allocations. In terms of the provincial breakdown, and the reason why, honorable members, I go to the provincial breakdown is simply because we are speaking particularly to the NCOP, and it's important for members of the NCOP to understand and appreciate that the money that I've just spoken about, we don't keep it in the Department of Social Development at national. We send it right down to where it belongs, and that's in the provinces. 8.4 billion goes to the Eastern Cape, 3.5 billion goes to the Free State, 16.5 billion goes to Gauteng, 9.7 billion goes to KwaZulu-Natal, KwaZulu. 4.7 billion goes to Mpumalanga, 5.4 billion goes to Limpopo, 2.8 billion goes to for the Northern Cape, 4.9 billion for Northwest, and 6.9 goes to the Western Cape. Now I come to our entities. One of our entities is SASSA, popularly known SASSA, and the CEO of SASSA is sitting right here. The journalists will have to answer about the 350. I'll give it to you, CEO. An amount of 7.499 billion is allocated towards SASSA's operations and grant payment fees. Part of improving SASSA's operational efficiency is to ensure that 95 of all face-to-face grant applications are processed within 5 days, while the target for new online applications is 10 days. In the previous financial year, we piloted the queue management system in local SASSA offices. Our plan is to incrementally roll out this system nationally in the coming years so that you don't see me in Inyala anymore. Added to this amount of 44 billion for the extension of the special COVID-19 grant. The grant will be distributed to 10.5 million eligible persons monthly until the end of March 2020. Honorable Chairperson, yesterday SASSA began to make the first payments after working tirelessly with our partners, the banks. While 321,819 people were paid yesterday, more than 700,000 beneficiaries will be paid by the end of the week. We truly do understand the pain and the hardship that our people are going through, and it is our intention to ensure that each of the 10.5 million eligible beneficiaries are in receipt of their payment. The payments we are processing over the next few weeks include the payment of appeals dating back to August 2021. These payment backlogs will be cleared and paid. Now to the National Development Agency. During this financial year, the National Development Agency received a transfer of 219 million to its budget as a contribution towards the fulfillment of its mandate, which includes grant funding and capacity building for civil society organization. An amount of 15 million has been set aside for this purpose. A dynamic civil society is a fundamental building block for the emergence of resilient communities and a vibrant democratic society. Even those others don't believe so, we do. In addition, while practicalizing the cabinet-adopted district development model, the NDA will pilot a new business model by targeting its implementation in other districts per province. Some of the targeted districts include, to name a few, OR Tambo, Eastern Cape Province, Ngaka Mudiri Mulema, Northwest, Lizweli Butswa, Free State, Waterberg, Limpopo, Amajuba in KwaZulu. Honorable Chair, I'm pleased also to announce to this Honorable House that we are at the final stages of appointing the board of the NDA, which will serve for the next 3 years, as according to the provisions of the NDA Act. Also with social development is the South African Council for Social Service Professions, its statutory body established in terms of Section 2 of the Social Services Professions Act. The mandate of the Council is to regulate professionalized and social service professions and conduct investigations into allegations of professional ethical misconduct in order to protect the public. The Council is funded mainly by annual registration fees it receives from registered social service professionals. We have allocated 7.016 million to augment the Council's budget over the medium-term expenditure framework. Now, coming to the department itself, as the mother, the father, the uncle, the aunt of everyone else, the department's specific allocation is 944 million, and the priorities that this will be directed towards are the following. Can I please have my phone to look at the department's programs? Thank you, Chairperson. I wanted to just get to the department before I get to those areas which we will be focusing on, because I think it's important for everyone to understand where does all that 944 million go to. Given this budget, the department will utilize it to provide social protection and social investments as stipulated in chapters 9, 10 of the Constitution and chapter 11 of the National Development Plan, as well as priority 1 and 4 of the MTSF. As a national department, our core business relates to the development of policy and legislation, to monitor its implementation in all provinces, to ensure capacity development and compliance of the same. These policies and legislations ensure that we provide care and support mainly for the poor and vulnerable individuals of society. This includes care and protection of children. We've just come out of the Child Protection Week, care support and promotion of the rights of the older persons, food security, development of individuals to attain their sustainable livelihoods, alleviating social ills such as substance abuse, violence against women and children, and matters pertaining to teenage pregnancies, amongst others. And honorable members, I am hoping that this issue of teenage pregnancy is something that you yourselves can also focus on, because what nation can allow a situation where your 10-year-olds getting pregnant? Who makes a 10-year-old pregnant? No 10-year-old makes a 10-year-old pregnant. It is adults, it is predators, it is people who are abusive, who think it is okay to make a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old pregnant. It is for this reason, Chairperson, having now spoken to the department's program, I now face the other issues which are of major importance to us. That is gender-based violence and femicide. And South Africans, we are indeed a very violent society. The recent quarterly crime statistics data shows that the first 3 months of this year were especially brutal for our country's women and children, and that the recorded numbers of murders, attempted murders, and assault of women increased by double digits. The likelihood is that for every reported case of gender-based violence, an unknown number of GBV incidences go unreported because there are families that decide they are not going to report it. They are going to be talking to each other, and some families even saying, so patali mbuzi, so keep mbuzi for such a crime. It must not happen. The fact that it is estimated 1 in 6 South African women is being abused while others are brutally killed by their male partners cannot and should not be tolerated by our society. In partnership with all society, we oppose this destructive culture of patriarchy and gender inequalities because these undermine our developmental efforts and inclusive economic growth. Our communities are still reeling at the horror and brutal killings of Hilary Gadi, Buntle Mashiane, Tsekofatso Pule, Namhla Mtwa, the number can go on, and too many others whose name I may not mention necessarily today, but we live in these communities and we know them. Our resolve to join efforts in people, public, private, civic, academic, multilateral partnership against this evil and menacing brutality should be strengthened. Guided by Pillar 4 of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, we will intensify the implementation of awareness and advocacy programs with specific attention to areas that the Minister of Police has declared gender-based violence. In this regard, our programmatic interventions include the deployment of GBVF ambassadors in hotspots such as Lusikisiki, Inanda, Delft. These initiatives are being complemented by expansion of shelters for survivors of gender-based violence. And again, honorable members, we will not do this work if we do it alone. We believe that working together, we can be able to do better. I also want to just quickly speak to the extended child support grant. We are turning the corner in our quest to find comprehensive legal solutions to foster care challenges which have been plaguing the sector for many years. In this regard, I'm pleased to announce that an amount of 687 million in 2023-24 and 871 million in 2024-2025 has been allocated for the implementation of the long-awaited extended child support grant, otherwise known as the top-up child support grant, for orphans who are in the care of relatives. Funds will be reprioritized within the current allocation of 248 billion for social grants expenditure to provide for the top-up. To date, SASSA has received over 1,000 applications from eligible caregivers. Once approved through the effortless process that we have put in place, unlike the lengthy foster care system that was applicable before, the eligible caregivers will receive an amount of 720 rands per child per month. This financial year alone, the grant is expected to benefit over 191,000 relatives or caregivers. Still on matters related to children, I'm pleased to inform this House that we have transferred the function of the early childhood development to the Department of Basic Education, and I'm sure that Minister Angie Motshekga must have also referred to that in her presentation. The Honorable Minister Angie and I have agreed that the Department of Social Development will continue supporting the transition process to ensure that there is a seamless provision of services. In line with the principle of funds follow function, the total amount that will be transferred to the Department of Basic Education for the 2022-23 financial year is 4.5 billion. Laba bathanda ukukhulumela safuthi ke siyababonisa manje ukuthi le mali iya la kufuneka uye khona ke mabethule kancane. The other issue is on substance abuse. One of the issues that concerns us is the twin challenges of illicit drug use and gangsterism. The combined impact of these challenges on individual, families, and neighbors is profound, and the need for urgent, collective, consistent action could not be clearer. The task of tackling this national emergency cannot be undertaken by one department alone. A collective effort is required, which is why we have set up the Central Drug Authority to lead the national efforts to implement the National Drug Master Plan 2019-2024. Equally, we will ensure that those affected to get the help they need through the public treatment. Our policy stance is clear that addiction is a chronic condition, and that when someone has been drawn into drug dependency, they should be supported to recover.
Ixesha lakho liphelile ngoku. Conclude, please.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu Chairperson. Ezinye ke sengizosho nje ukuthi ezinye sengikhulumile nge-child pregnancy, teenage pregnancy, employment of service professionals, nayo leyo isiphethe, non-governmental organization. Okugcina ke Chairperson sengivala nje ke niyazi nonke ukuthi we've got the legislative program. I'm not going to go into that program. And in closing, ngicela ukubonga i-department yami, the agencies, nabo bonke abantu engisebenza nabo engigijima nabo. Ngiphinde ngibone ngomndeni wami, my family especially, who have been able to support me throughout this period. My family has been supportive. I've abused them one way or the other because I'm hardly ever there, but they know that I'm doing the work of the people. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I'll now hand over to Honorable Sylvia Lucas, Deputy Chairperson of NCOP. Over to you, Deputy Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson, and thank you very much to the Minister. We will now request that the Honorable Gillian, the Chairperson of the Select Committee on Health and Social Services, continue with the debate. Honorable Gillian.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson.
The Chairperson of the Select Committee on Health and Social Services, continue with the debate. Honorable Gillian.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Greetings to the Chairperson of the NCOP, the Chief Whip, House Chairpersons, MECs present, the Minister and the Deputy Minister who is present within this debate, and also to all delegates. Honorable Chairperson, Section 27 of our Constitution enshrines everyone's right to sufficient food, water, and social security, and that this democratic government must take all reasonable legislative measures for the realization of that right. Therefore, the Department of Social Development is mandated to ensure protection against vulnerability by creating an enabling environment for the provision of a comprehensive, integrated, and sustainable social development service. Honorable Chair, South Africa is not a welfare state, but our government has to put measures in place to ensure that the welfare of the poor in our country is protected. The lived experiences of many South Africans, in particular Africans, women and children, dictate that our government put in place measures such as the social assistance, social security, and welfare services in the form of social grants, food relief packages, etc., to address the immediate needs to address poverty alleviation and food insecurity. Honorable Chairperson, we welcome the commitment to the implementation of a national food and nutrition security plan. It is high time that we encourage our people to be involved in individual homes and community school garden projects for both poverty alleviation and for sustainable livelihood. Our ANC government is committed in creating an ethical and capable developmental state, which should drive the socio-economic development of our society. As the African National Congress, we welcome the initiative by the Minister and the Department to professionalize the sector through the enactment of the Social Service Professionals Bill. That would be debated in this House sometime during the course of this year. Honorable Deputy Chair, we are concerned with the little budget allocated to the National Development Agency, which has a huge responsibility of eradicating poverty and its causes. The NDA does this through its mentoring of community-based organization for self-sustainability while eradicating poverty in these communities. We further welcome the commitment made that the NDA will create more than 3,000 job opportunities during this financial year. These commitments are in line with the objectives of the government as outlined in the President's State of the Nation address in the beginning of this year. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Program 5 of the Department of Social Development is about the implementation of social policy and integrated service delivery. The African National Congress appreciates the commitment made under this program as presented in the annual performance plans of this department. Among the issues that the department is going to implement is to ensure that they process within 2 months at least 98% of NPO applications that the department would have received. Sorry. Further, the APP commits in reviewing NPO's annual reports within 2 months of their receipt. This has been one of the challenges encountered by new NPOs. These actions will ensure that new non-profit organizations will not have to wait long for their approval, but also through a fast-track review of the annual reports, they would be able to apply on time for funding. Honorable Deputy Chair, we wish to further welcome the commitment made by the Department of Social Development with regards to job creation. President Ramaphosa had called on all government departments to prioritize job creation, and this department will contribute in that objective by creating more than 176,474 EPWP work opportunities through its social sector EPWP programs. Furthermore, the department will contribute in skills development through training about 600 young people throughout the country in various skills. The measure to fight gender-based violence and femicide, Honorable Chairperson, the hard lockdown in the initial stages of the COVID-19 pandemic in this country did not only expose the level of inequality, poverty, and unemployment, but also it exposed the veracity of the source of gender-based violence and femicide in our communities. During that time, homes became an abusive environment for women and children. According to the South African Police Services, it reported that during the first week of the lockdown, they received more than 2,300 phone calls reporting GBVF incidences in their homes. We welcome the Minister's commitment in the eradication of the source of GBVF in our communities. The Department of Social Development has put in place measures and programs to implement the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. Amongst the programs that Minister put in place was the training and the deployment of GBVF ambassadors that would work closely with local community organizations that are already in the sector. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, President Ramaphosa, during his SONA, encouraged the need for social compact. The Department of Social Development, through its various partnerships with civil society organizations in addressing GBVF, is a demonstration of what can be achieved through social compacting. Honorable Deputy Chair, the impact of the pandemic of the livelihoods of millions of South Africans have been extreme. While in some ways communities is acclimatizing themselves to the new norm, the effects of the pandemic on the global economy are quite significant and linger on. Millions of jobs have been lost, and many families and individuals displaced by COVID-19. South Africa, being a country that battles the source of unemployment, inequality, and poverty, has further been plunged into vulnerability by the pandemic. The implementation of the COVID-19 SRD grant has certainly buffered many families from the full impact of the pandemic on their livelihoods. Politically, the rollout of the SRD grant is an important step towards addressing poverty and inequality. In line with the ANC's commitment to economic transformation, the commitment to expand the pay point areas of the SRD to local consumer good traders represents a step in the right direction for laying the foundation for an inclusive economy that we aspire for. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, we further acknowledge the steps taken by the department to not only providing psycho support to GBVF victims, but also in the country. In most cases, the victims of GBVF are people who are reliant on their livelihoods and the perpetrator. Therefore, the transfer of skills will go a long way in empowering the victims' independent livelihoods. Honorable Deputy Chair, as we intensify the fight against the GBVF, we must not forget to intensify our fight against unwanted teenage pregnancies, alcohol and substance abuse, and against gangsterism in our schools and communities. We welcome the emphasis of the Minister that the Minister has put on the fight against these social ills that are killing the future of our country. It cannot be the responsibility of the government and social organizations alone, but we must strive to include the affected communities. The payout of the social relief of the stress grant has resulted in long queues in our post offices, with people lining up for queues as early as the night before their payment date. Further, the application process for the grant has demonstrated that digitization is the way to go. Many of the beneficiaries of the SRD grant made the application via their mobile phones, therefore confirming the need for a transition towards the full utilization of the opportunities brought by the fourth industrial revolution. We call upon the Department of Social Development and SASSA to explore the possibility of introducing a financial technology system which will reduce the cost of distributing grants whilst creating inclusive access. Honorable Deputy Chair, it is disheartening to read on the news and reports of corruption and fraud involving public servants defrauding monies meant for the most vulnerable South Africans. We welcome the commitment made by the Minister of rooting out fraudulent activities in rolling out of SRD. Fraudulent activity in any size, shape, or form is a gross injustice to the people of South Africa. We cannot, as such, protect any elements in the state that seek to rob the country and its people. Honorable Deputy Chair, in conclusion, we need to strengthen ethical governance within the public sector. This can only be done if we continuously emphasize the upholding of the Code of Conduct for Public Servants. The African National Congress in the National Council of Provinces support the Department of Social Development Budget Vote 19. I thank you, Deputy Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gillian. We will continue with the debate and we call on Honorable Mani Luciti of the Eastern Cape to continue with the debate.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. Greetings to yourself, the honorable ministers and the deputy ministers, all honorable members and delegates, fellow South Africans. Allow me again to greet you as I rise on behalf of the Eastern Cape to support the 2022-23 Budget Vote 19 of the Department of Social Development as tabled by the Honorable Minister Lindiwe Zulu. Since the beginning of the sixth administration and the past 2 years of the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic and other disasters, the Minister has provided a sterling leadership to the social development portfolio. Indeed, under her leadership, the portfolio has managed to ensure that we build comprehensive systems of social protection that has brought social solidarity to life and the vulnerable groups. In the province of the Eastern Cape, the Minister and the Deputy Minister have been part of our intervention to prioritize the rights of women, youth, children, and people with disabilities. Honorable Chairperson, we recognize that we're now at the midterm of the sixth administration and that we only have less than 7 years left towards the realization of the goals set out in Vision 2023. This means that we must prioritize the implementation of the programs which will yield the greatest impact towards the attainment of Vision 2030. As we look forward to a new financial year, we therefore appreciate the message of the Minister in that, I quote, "The social development portfolio is entering a period of great shift wherein our visibility, responsiveness, and relevance will be aligned with the people's felt needs," close quote. In his State of the Nation address in February this year, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa called for an urgent necessity to fuse our efforts in tackling our present-day challenges. President Ramaphosa articulated a need for what he termed as a new consensus. He said it must be, I quote, "a consensus that is born out of a common understanding of our challenging situation and recognition of the need to address the challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality." Honorable Deputy Chair, we affirm that the 10-point intervention outlined in the budget vote indeed seek to intensify the interventions that address the impact of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. The demand for developmental social welfare services has increased immensely amid the socio-economic challenge caused by the pandemic. The allocation of the 257 billion from our fiscus is indicative of the immense task we have in responding to the challenges of poverty and hopelessness. The Minister's budget speech has done exceptionally well in aligning our policies, programs, and our service deliverables towards realizing social transformation as we navigate the difficult times presented by the post-COVID-19 economy. In this regard, we have learned some key lessons in operating the COVID-19 pandemic, wherein agility and speed have become the norm in decision-making. Government and social partners prove that it is possible to put agency in dealing with transformation. Secondly, social compacting between government and social partners emerged and informed decisions structures at all levels in the country, and this proved that it is possible for government to partner with the private sector and pool resources. Integration within and between government departments became norm, and all it needs is sustaining through systems and beyond structures. One of the key priority areas of the sixth administration includes building a capable, ethical, and developmental state, which marks a significant and a radical shift from a welfare-oriented stance to a more developmental approach. This therefore means strengthening community development services towards sustaining livelihoods. In advocating for the shift, efforts will be made to ensure that a strength-based, community-centered and participatory approach to integrated service delivery within the broad mandate of social development. In realizing these priorities, the department remains steadfast in improving governance and management practices on effective planning, operational efficiency, and overseeing the implementation of the policies through effective planning, monitoring, and evaluation systems. Essential to the strategic plan's ability to guide clear actions is the need to renew the organizational culture and the delivery of services, while also strengthening management capabilities. The extent to which we meet these goals will speak volumes about our determination to improve the lives of the people we serve. Honorable members, these priorities are anchored by the NDP vision, which seeks to establish a responsive social protection system. In this regard, we want to ensure that families, as the cornerstone of a developmental state, will appreciate the increase of the budget for social assistance to 248.2 billion for 22-23 financial year. This shows our commitment in cushioning the vulnerable members of society. Honorable members, in view of the escalating incidences of violence against women, we welcome the intervention and the commitment by the department as led by the minister to, through the NDA, strengthen our GBVF-focused partnerships with civil society organizations that render services to victims of gender-based violence. We welcome the 103 million rands worth of funding that has been approved. This will indeed go a long way in fighting the scourge of gender-based violence. However, we must reiterate the principal point that the relentless fight against gender-based violence and femicide is a social collective matter. Indeed, the realization of a prosperous and a vibrant democracy is centrally comprised and tarnished by the violence directed at women and gender non-conforming persons. We welcome the intervention of the Social Employment Fund that will create a further 50,000 work opportunities using the capability of organizations beyond government in areas such as early childhood development and tackling gender-based violence. In supporting NPOs, which impact positively in the development and empowerment of vulnerable groups in our communities, thus contributing to the improved quality of life, we therefore welcome the 3 million which has been allocated to support NPOs and the more than 7 billion that will be directed to provinces. In conclusion, Deputy Chair, I want to commit and assure the people of the Eastern Cape that the Department of Social Development, including its agencies and stakeholders, will continue to strive for the betterment of their lives and the realization of a more sustainable society. Honorable Chair, Budget Vote 19 of Social Development is supported by the Eastern Cape. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable MEC. We now call on Honorable Christians to continue with the debate. Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Honorable Members, and Honorable Minister. South Africa currently records the highest unemployment rate in the world, and the current economic indicators are reflective of a struggling economy, suffering high job losses and high levels of economic inactivity, exacerbated by the COVID-19 lockdown restrictions and further intensified by recent natural disasters. It has been reported that 46% of the population are on some or other sort of social support from the Department of Social Development. And the question is, how long is this sustainable without looking at the root cause of poverty and unemployment? Deputy Chairperson, even prior to the pandemic, the country was evolving into a welfare state. It must therefore be acknowledged that it is through the failings of government that a grant needs to be secured, as the state is unable to secure jobs, provide quality education, health, or social assistance, thereby creating a welfare state. There is no clear plan or commitment to lift the people of this country out of poverty. Just recently, we read on social media how a young man committed suicide out of desperation because he could not find a job. Close to 200 children died of malnutrition in the first few months of this year, forced to eat sand to fill their stomachs. Foster care and adoption programs remain in crisis as red tape leaves many vulnerable children unattended. We are pleased to hear the Minister say it is receiving attention and funds, and we will continue to monitor the progress. The HIV budget has been cut by 1 million rand. The older persons program has been reduced by 1.1 million rand. The substance abuse program has been substantially reduced from 21.9 million rand to 20.7 million rand. NPOs remain underfunded. Approximately 7,000 social workers have still not been employed despite the plethora of social issues in the country. And this department, along with the other state departments in this country, seems to have given up on the gender-based violence and femicide scourge. The department has discontinued the social work scholarship for this financial year and has failed to absorb social work graduates. Social work graduates who benefited from the social work scholarship remain unemployed, leading to wasteful expenditure and, of course, with that, the rise in social ills. This leaves provincial departments to come up with strategies to absorb social work graduates, as there continues to be a lack of social workers in rural areas, including in schools. Considering also that 70,000 social workers are required in order to implement the amended Children's Bill, and 5,000 additional social workers needed to implement the Substance Abuse Bill. Deputy Chairperson, the NCOP's role in overseeing the budget is to ensure that provincial and municipal interests are properly accommodated in the budget and that the division is equitable. The consistent reduction in funding across the entire provincial departments of social developments is therefore a cause for concern. The department emphasizes that social welfare services is a priority, but budget cuts in provinces in the social welfare program suggest otherwise. Drastic reductions in provincial budgets have been made where provinces have had to take full responsibility for psychosocial services, HIV programs, shelters, NGOs, and funding for food security. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, let's move our focus to SASSA. The presentation made to the Select Committee on Health and Social Services indicates that SASSA had 50 planned performance targets, but they only achieved 37, which translates to 74% achievement rate. This means that the agency did not achieve 19 of the planned targets for 2020-2021 financial year. In Program 1 of SASSA, administration only achieved 23 out of the 32 planned targets. The agency only managed to finalize 16 of 1,167 financial misconduct cases, and only 64% reported fraud and corruption cases were investigated. Key grants administration systems remain problematic as the target was not achieved as scanning solutions was not deployed to regions nor supported by a training module as per approved project plan. Out of 20 internal audit reviews planned to be conducted, the agency only conducted 3 internal audit reviews. Vacancies in the department continue to present challenges for service delivery. In the year under review, the vacancy rate for the department was at 57.4%. And additionally, the target related to internal audit and risk management was again not achieved as highlighted in the annual report. Irregular expenditure to the tune of 1.142 billion rand for the year under review was reported. And the agency incurred 87.3 million in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Of concern is that the agency spent 96% of its allocated budget, but only achieved 74% of its planned targets for the year under review. Under Program 2, Benefits Administration and Support, the agency had incurred irregular expenditure to the amount of 73 million rand. This relates to failure to follow a competitive process and expired lease contracts still in use, and cleaning and sanitation contracts not following tender processes, as well as fruitless and wasteful expenditure to the amount of 1 million rand relating to penalties and not honoring booked hotels. The Auditor General reported that effective and appropriate steps were not taken to prevent irregular expenditure amounting to 73.1 million rand, and that the majority of the irregular expenditure resulted from expired lease contracts still in use, as well as cleaning and sanitation contracts not following tender processes. The AG also noted internal control deficiencies as leadership did not exercise adequate oversight responsibility over compliance with applicable legislation and performance reporting. This resulted in instances of irregular expenditure not being prevented and reported, and performance achievements not agreeing with supporting documentation. Payments were made to ineligible individuals due to inadequate internal controls to perform validations and prevent payments being made to persons that were not entitled to the SRD 350 Rand grant. The irregular expenditure incurred by the agency to the value of 73 million Rand during the period under review remains a serious concern. South Africa's problem is that there is no viable economic growth, too much debt and corruption, and not enough money to assist the poor, disabled, vulnerable in this country. In fact, more and more people are queuing for social assistance outside SASSA offices. Is the South African government serious about curbing the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide, not according to the annual performance plans or budget? Furthermore, Minister, have any of the social protection programs made an impact in the country? If so, could you please indicate to the House how and where it has managed to reduce the suffering of vulnerable women, children, and those with disabilities? It is no secret that South Africa is in an economic crisis due to corruption, mismanagement, and a failing economy. As the challenges of the fiscal resources increase, the department's capacity to implement policies, reduce poverty, and create employment opportunities will continue to be impacted negatively. I thank you, Deputy Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Christians. We are continuing, and I'm calling on Honorable Leahy to continue with the debate. Honorable Leahy.
Chairperson, the Economic Freedom Fighters reject the budget for social development. The Department of Social Development is responsible for providing social development, protection, and welfare services to the public and general people of South Africa. Some of its main objective is to ensure that it creates an enabling environment for the poor, the vulnerable, and excluded members of the South African society to secure a better social welfare by creating an enabling environment, which your department has failed drastically. As a country, South Africa faces overwhelming socio-economic development challenges such as poverty, which stand as a security threat, as this department has failed to provide for a social security system that uplift our people out of poverty. The poor continue to suffer the effects of mismanaged economy, deep structural poverty, the COVID-19 pandemic, and now the floods in KZN and Eastern Cape. Many of the NGOs under your department are not funded. They have either received partial funds or no funding at all. This has happened under your watch, and you have failed dismally to ensure that proper financial support are given to NGOs. Ratlehile Center for Disabled Women and Children in Makwas Hills in the Northwest Province, knows of your failure, as you have failed to ensure that there is proper sanitation provided to the elderly people who cannot take care of themselves. The workers in many centers across the country have been failed by your department. as they are volunteering and working without any payment whatsoever. The department has sent a lot of students to study social work. However, there has not been any placement of many of those students who are qualified as social workers. There exist no plans in place on how to absorb graduates into the department in order to address the issues of high unemployment in the country. The department has failed our people, particularly women and the young people of this country, because there are little to no programs which are fully funded in terms of developing skills of our people so that they can become independent and participate in the economy of our country. Our country faces a high unemployment rate, which is at the heart of many of the challenges faced. Problems resulting from this include crime, hopelessness, a state of inequality, and the poverty cycle. In terms of Social Security Minister, the department has failed. You have failed the offense across this country by not amending legislation to ensure that when individuals turn 18 of age, they are not cut off from social grants. The truth is that they cannot be able to provide for themselves. Many of our learners finish their high school at the age of 18. We're supposed to pay who's supposed to pay for their university fees? Who's supposed to take care and provide a shelter for them? Who's supposed to buy them food? We are failing to ensure that the vulnerable and less privileged have a secured future. Your department has failed the people of KZN, the people of Northwest, and the people of Eastern Cape. No relief has been provided for them since the devastating floods. Which program is your department and embarked upon to ensure that it restores the dignity and livelihood of the victims of the floods? Under a capable government, overcoming socio-economic development challenges in South Africa is actually possible. However, such reforms can never come out under the leadership of the ANC. As the EFF, we have consistently made calls for reforms. We must increase the child support grant. We must increase the disability grant. We must increase the old age grant. We must increase the foster grant. A permanent solution is the implementation of social assistance and work towards a universal basic income for all. The EFF rejects the proposed budget for the Department of Social Development because it does not make provision for these increases or work towards implementation of the universal basic income grant, despite the EFF's call for these increases. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lee. We will now call on the Honorable Maleka to continue with the debate. Honorable Maleka.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, this budget policy debate takes place 2 days before the nation commemorates Youth Day. The brutal events of 1976 can never be erased from the history of this country. As leaders and activists in the democratic movement, we have the responsibility of ensuring that issues affecting the livelihood of young people remain at the center of all discussions about the nation's development trajectory. Studies by the United Nations on population projects that by 2015, youth populations in the poorest countries are likely to increase by 62%. As a developing nation that is faced with a reality of widening inequality, it is therefore prudent that we do not ignore these projections, but that we continue to ensure that our governmental interventions are strategically mainstreaming young people. The President's budget vote speech last week at the National Assembly highlighted the inroads that haven't been made in the area of the economic empowerment of unemployed South Africans. This is done through the presidential employment stimulus that has created 879,000 opportunities, which have primarily benefited young people and women. In South Africa and the world at large, young people and young women in particular continue to carry the brunt of violence, poverty, and inequality amongst other ills. It is therefore necessary that this reality is one that is grounded in our engagement of the budget vote, as previously tabled by the Minister of Social Development, Honorable Minister Lindiwe Zulu. The mandate of the Department of Social Development is to provide social protection services and lead the government efforts to forge partnership through which vulnerable individuals, groups, and communities become capable and self-reliant participants in their own development. This mandate has been given by the people of this country through bestowing their confidence to the African National Congress, shown in their support for the organization and policies as articulated in its manifesto. Honorable Deputy Chair, I wish to categorically state that the position of the ANC on social transformation is one that is the center of the department's official mandate. The bias towards the working class, poor, and otherwise marginalized people of this country remains the cornerstone of the ANC's revolutionary policy positions. As a political organization, our tradition are rooted in the understanding of the South African society as one that has over the years been confronted by oppression through both colonialism and apartheid. As such, as an organization and progressive activists committed to justice and equality, we will not shy away from the reality of our history, because it is from this premise where we can honestly and critically engage with the status quo of our nation and chart a way forward to the future we espouse. One of the legacies of colonialism and apartheid is its displacement and marginalization of the African majority. Both these political systems have succeeded in this centralizing the majority, and it is indeed our responsibility as the African National Congress to ensure that social welfare of South Africans is prioritized. Today's engagement of the minister's budget vote is inspired by the thinking of the renowned Pan-Africanist, Marxist scholar and revolutionary activist, Thomas Sankara, particularly his ideas of patriarchy, women and the revolution. Honorable Minister, according to Comrade Sankara, there is no true social revolution without the emancipation of women. It is this very thinking, therefore, that frames our acknowledgement of women as among the motive forces of change as articulated in the ANC strategy and tactics. A policy perspective that continues to shape the agenda of the African National Congress and its approach not only to liberation politics, but also to governance. Honorable members, of course, the Department of Social Development does not only seek the benefit of women through its various departmental programs. This being so, it is still important to understand that the legacy of the patriarchal system that has previously thrived in South Africa lingers. This is the legacy that has seen the triple oppression of African women on the basis of their race, class position, and their sex. In order to bring our real transformation and application of agenda analysis to the budget vote 19 is non-negotiable. Our pursuit towards a non-sexist society, therefore, remains relevant and must all times be seen as urgent. Given the reality of the global political economy, Sub-Saharan Africa is expected to experience the height of this dependent level of poverty, given that 62.8% of women living in extreme poverty are from this region. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, it is important to recognize the extent to which the programs of the department play a critical role in keeping South Africans out of poverty and vulnerability. These programs include over and above the rollout of social grants, which includes financial commitment towards the COVID-19 social relief of distress grant of 44 billion. Extended child support grant at over 680 million, and the welfare services policy development at 309 million. In real terms, it is indeed this intervention that makes it possible for children who have been left orphaned by the scourge of HIV and AIDS, COVID-19, and gender-based violence and femicide to continue to receive support from the state. There is offering them better prospects for their future. The budget vote, as outlined, is out cause about the delivery of social services, but it is most importantly a bread and butter issue for the millions of beneficiaries of these grants. The Department of Social Development remains a strategic department that makes an important contribution to addressing gender inequality, whilst alleviating poverty and serving as a building block upon which millions of vulnerable and marginalized South Africans. Honorable members, appreciating the details provided in the budget vote 19 as presented, it is worldwide that mainstreaming youth and women's issues remain central. Meaningful also at the numerous debates that have swelled political and social discussion, specifically as relates to social welfare in general. And the policy of the basic income grant in particular, it is important that the needs and interest of the majority of the people in South Africa remain a priority. Our remains an agenda to advance the development of a society that is non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous. Given the demographics of our nation and the degree of inequality that exists still, a perspective that engages with the reality of such inequality must at all times be forward-grounded in order to ensure that this prosperity and equality that will aspire for is one that is enjoyed not only by some, but by all South Africans. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, it is indeed important to acknowledge the complex economic reality that faces us as a nation and the constraints that this presents for dealing with inequality in the country. However, given the emphasis made on the importance of applying a gender lens to budget processes, it is important that the budget, as outlined by the Minister, is supported. Our view is one that sees this budget vote as a vote for the marginalized people in South Africa, women, youth, and children in particular. As the African National Congress, we are confident that the budget as presented will certainly make a difference in the lives of many South Africans, providing integrated, comprehensive, and sustainable social development services towards a self-reliant society. As ANC, we support the budget vote. Thank you, Deputy Chair.
Siyabonga mama.
Thank you very much, Honorable Malika. We will now call on the Honorable Fernandez to continue with the debate. Honorable Fernandez.
Honorable Deputy Chairperson, the Honorable Minister Zulu, all Honorable Ministers present. This debate takes place as the city and province is affected by severe weather conditions, including widespread flooding. Recently, we have seen other provinces affected by natural disasters too. So these are incredibly challenging times for the citizens of South Africa, whom we are mandated to serve. This is compounded by the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on the socio-economic landscape of the country since the Disaster Management Act was first implemented in March 2020. The ongoing pandemic has affected the lives and livelihoods of many South Africans. It has been indiscriminatory in its nature, and it has impacted the psyche of the nation. Yet the acts of kindness and solidarity by civil society, our NPO partners, and all stakeholders during this time has been immense, and for that I am deeply grateful. Honourable Deputy Chairperson, the Minister of Social Development, Honourable Minister Lindiwe Zulu, made some bold statements about the department's commitment to intentionally intensify its contributions towards interventions that address the impact of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Whilst I welcome the fact that the 2022-23 budget vote 19 of the Department of Social Development is government's third largest budget for the 2022-23 financial year, constituting 13.1% of government's overall budget of 1.957 trillion, excuse me, I fear that the national DSD's problem is much larger than budgetary constraints, but rather systems, or in fact, the lack of systems in place to ensure that the department's funding does indeed change the lives of its intended recipients. Honourable Deputy Chairperson, in the interests of time, I will confine my inputs to the failure of SASSA to deliver on its basic mandate. The announcement that 248 billion will be distributed directly to more than 18 million beneficiaries monthly raises many questions. Will additional capacity be provided, Honourable Deputy Chairperson, to SASSA, given all the additional funds and grants that SASSA has been expected to administer? It doesn't help to keep adding money to grants if it cannot be channeled to those who need it most, effectively and efficiently and responsibly. Where is the plan for the additional infrastructure and personnel to ensure that SASSA is responsive and able to reach citizens, especially those in deep rural areas? Will the disparity of SASSA officers across the country be addressed? More importantly, Honourable Deputy Chairperson, where is the SASSA winter readiness plan on a very cold day like today? During the 2015-2016 financial year, 16.9 million people were receiving a social grant. Today, that figure stands at nearly 18 million. This is not a statistic to be proud of, yet the ANC continues to celebrate the increasing number of citizens falling into poverty. Honourable Chairperson, if we include the additional 10.5 million individuals that are deemed eligible for the SRD 350 grant for the current financial year, more than 28 million people will be receiving some form of state support. I would like to ask the entire House to let that figure sink in for a second. 28 million people. We have become a welfare state. Sadly, nearly 50% of this country is in poverty, and this is something the National Department wishes to celebrate by calling it a priority. We should hang our heads in shame. We can and must do better. Honourable Deputy Chairperson, if history is to repeat itself, I'm also fearful that the 44 billion rand allocated for the extension of the special COVID-19 social relief of distress grant for 1 year will not reach its intended recipients timeously. The fact that some beneficiaries have missed out on payments for 2 months is an indictment. People are hungry today and need the much needed relief now. Honourable Deputy Speaker, if the initial management of the ECD Stimulus Relief Fund and previously lapsed temporary disability grants by the National DSD is anything to go by, I can only imagine that we will witness challenges with this project too. It is not a matter of if, but rather when. Although provincial departments of social development are not mandated to provide social relief of distress, we have been forced to absorb the failure of SASSA. We have had to allocate funding, which ought to be directed to our statutory work to fill the gaps, particularly with regards to food relief, which the Western Cape Department of Social Development has allocated just over 50 million for the 2022-23 financial year. Whilst we recognize that this is not a provincial government's mandate, we believe that it is the responsibility of all spheres of government to ensure that no person is left behind. Honourable Deputy Chairperson, it is important to note that on a day-to-day basis, my office receives emails, calls, WhatsApp and SMS messages from SASSA clients desperate for any form of assistance because I am told no one responds to emails, no one answers the phone. We have even had occasions when SASSA officials failed to pitch in far-flung rural communities as promised. Never has there been a time for SASSA to step up and deliver on its constitutional obligations as contained in the Social Assistance Act of 2004. Honourable Deputy Chairperson, I must express my disappointment that the Honourable Minister Zulu made no mention of the psychosocial impact of COVID-19 pandemic on citizens across the country. The need for psychosocial services increased dramatically as a consequence of bereavement, grief, loss, and the increasing number of citizens becoming unemployed due to COVID-19. I would like to encourage the Minister to consult with the social sector cabinet colleagues and consider implementing transversal measures to support the emotional and psychological well-being of our citizens. I wish to quote the National Minister directly to reiterate the Western Cape governments to provide safe spaces for victims of gender-based violence. I quote the Minister with regards to expansion of shelters. We are working jointly with the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure to identify state-owned facilities across the country that can be repurposed into Kusuleka one-stop centers. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I do believe that since this announcement was made in March 2020, that the Western Cape is the only province to have successfully converted all of the 6 state-owned facilities handed over by the National Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure into safe houses for victims of gender-based violence. Last year, we completed the refurbishment of all 6 properties in record time. I am also pleased to announce that all 6 properties are fully functional and currently housing survivors of gender-based violence. This, whilst other provinces have made little or no progress. Honourable Deputy Chairperson, I reiterate my stance and deep concern regarding state dependency and what we really ought to be directing our attention to. Instead of identifying state dependency as a key priority, the Western Cape has committed to being obsessed with empowering the people whom we serve through creating opportunities for employment. The solution to ending poverty and ensuring that we create a prosperous future for our children is through job creation. I wish to quote the words of the Premier of the Western Cape, Alan Winde, in this regard. And he said, I quote, "We must fight back against our pandemic of joblessness because a job puts food on the table. A job keeps a child in school. A job can keep a young man off the street and out of a gang. And a job can mean a healthier and happier and longer life for you, close quote. Let us
As you
unite.
conclude,
I shall
as you
finish.
conclude,
Let us unite to fight the pandemic of poverty, inequality, and an unemployment that is sweeping our country. We must be intentional if we wish to avoid a humanitarian crisis. The time is now. I thank you.
thank you very much, Honorable Shana Fernandez. We are continuing and we will call on Honorable Rakwale from Limpopo to continue with the debate. And in that, I will also request the Honorable Nyambi then to continue presiding. Thank you very much. Honorable Rakwale.
Thank you so much, Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, Honorable Lucas, the Minister of Social Development, Malindi Zulu, Deputy Minister Mebo Hupani Zulu, members of the Select Committee on Social Services and Health, other MECs from other provinces who have joined the sitting, honorable members, all protocol observed. It is my pleasure to be part of today's National Council of Provinces debate on Vote 19 of the Department of Social Development. Today's sitting is taking place at a time we are commemorating Youth Month as a nation. As democratically elected government, we are using this month to demonstrate our determination to empower the youth and highlight the strides that have been made in the education sector since the infamous 1976 Soweto uprising. These activities are build-ups for the June 16 commemoration, which will happen in 2 days' time. It is indeed very important for all of us to reflect on this important historic event, which put pressure on the past regime, which disregarded the human rights of our people for many decades and ultimately turned the tide against apartheid. Honorable members, the plight of young people in this country demands that all government departments and the private sector redouble their efforts in creating jobs opportunities for young people. The realization of the goal will really ease the social protection pressure on the Department of Social Development. And the situation stands, the majority of South Africans, especially those in rural provinces such as Limpopo, are largely dependable on the government social grants, which is mainly within the Department of Social Development. These grants are in fact the main source of income for about 18 million people across the country. In Limpopo, half of the population depends on the provision of these grants. We therefore strongly believe that the department's budget allocation of 257 billion, of which 248 billion is allocated to cover more than 18 million social grant beneficiaries. This will go a long way in mitigating the effects of poverty that some of our people are currently enduring. Guided by this reality, we are indeed delighted that the sixth administration, as led by the President Cyril Ramaphosa, is determined to ensure that no South African, especially the vulnerable groups of our society, go to bed on an empty stomach. As a country, we just observed National Child Protection Week, which the social development used to highlight the plight of the children of our country. Once again, take this opportunity to remind South African citizens that parents and other caregivers have a full responsibility of ensuring that children are always protected and cared for, as articulated in some sections of Children's Act and the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. The continuing incidence of gender-based violence in some part of South Africa has a direct and indirect impact on the safety and well-being of our children. Still talking about child protection, I must indicate that the Department of Social Development budget vote, as presented by our Minister Zulu, demonstrated that government is determined to ensure that it continues to protect children with one of the most effective ways, which is the Child Support Grant. Minister Zulu indicated that as soon as the amended regulation to the Social Assistance Act of 2004 are published, SASSA will be able to provide the extended child support grant of 720 per child per month to relatives who are caring for orphan children. While we expect the extended child support grant to be implemented this month, we estimate that it will be received by over 191,000 recipients during the 2022-2023 financial year. One other milestone which must be applauded is that in order to access this grant, qualifying applicants need to go through the lengthy children's court process. As a result, the affected children will quickly receive the support they need for them to unlock their full potential. We must also draw wisdom from the words of South Africa's first democratic president, Nelson Mandela, who once said, as I quote, Our children are our future, and one of the basic responsibilities is to care for them in the best and most compassionate manner possible, I close quote. All South Africans must refuse to be the society that has a total disregard for the rights of children. The Department of Social Development is continuing to put all the systems in place to redouble its effort in the fight against substance abuse, which is one of the contributory factors in the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide. We have now started to observe that drug dealers are targeting the youth in townships and rural areas. This is after the law enforcement agencies managed to squeeze their space in the cities and towns. The department and law enforcement agencies are zooming into these rural areas in terms of crime awareness campaign and calling for communities to work jointly with government in eradicating drugs in our communities. We therefore welcome the support that the department is giving to the Central Drug Authority in doing its work, the registration and monitoring of non-profit organizations, the promotion of population policy, community development and substance abuse, advisory service and oversight at an amount of over 7 million rands. In line with the commitment of the 6th administration as led by our President Ramaphosa, the Department of Social Development will continue to play an important role in the implementation of Pillar 4 of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. Our society strides in undoing the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide rests on the pursuit of comprehensive and targeted partnerships across different sectors. We also want to welcome a move by the Department of Justice and Correctional Services program of ensuring that it also plays a role in empowering communities about the dangers and effects of gender-based violence and femicide. In Limpopo, the Department of Social Development has recently joined the Black Management Forum and the Department of Justice and Correctional Services in reaching out to communities to talk about gender-based violence. The Director General Advocate Dr. Mashabani and some judges were also forming part of the awareness campaigns. These campaigns also assist us to encourage people to break the silence against the abuse of the vulnerable groups of society. They will also assist in terms of restoring trust in the country's justice system. It is our strong conviction that when the wheels of justice are seen turning strongly against gender-based violence and femicide, it will deter would-be perpetrators to commit these heinous acts. During these interactions with our people, judges also added their voices in pleading for gender-based violence and femicide incident to stop as they are stripping away the dignity and the rights of women and children. The attacks on vulnerable groups of society are not just statistics, but these are the people whose rights are violated by abusers who must be rooted out of communities. We have also seen Minister Begitele on the ground together with SAPS determined to clamp down on gender-based violence, and society at large must also come on board. Honorable members, we also take comfort in the fact that the President highlighted during the delivery of the Presidency's budget vote 5 days ago that there are continued efforts by government to deal with social ills such as GBV and F, and President said, as I quote, putting stringent laws in place and enhancing the capacity of the police and prosecutorial service to investigate and prosecute these crimes is not enough. And we need all of society's involvement in prevention efforts, close quote. Community-based organizations are indeed agents of change and play an important role in the efforts of eradicating gender-based violence and femicide and other social ills. As I conclude, Chairperson, we would like to appreciate the effort by the National Department of Social Development together with Public Works and Infrastructure of wanting to expand the shelters of the victims of gender-based violence, as this will augment to the victim empowerment centers that we're already funding in provinces. The state-owned facilities across the country can indeed be repurposed into Khuseleka one-stop centers. The department's VEP program assists in terms of ensuring that psychosocial support services are provided to survivors of violent crimes and the recovery process. As the Limpopo, we support the budget as presented by our Honorable Minister, Minister Lindiwe Zulu. I thank you, Deputy Chairperson.
Thank you, MEC. I'll now invite Honorable Dutoit.
Unmute.
Honorable Dutoit, unmute. Unmute, Honorable Dutoit.
Am I audible, Chair?
Yes, you are audible now.
Thank you. Let's try again. Agbare voorsitter, hoekom spog die minister?
Honorable Chairperson, why is the minister bragging about this appropriation bill while it is one of the third largest appropriation bills in the entire government? If it was maybe the police or health, we could understand. The minister says that we have a big social need in our country.
Towards the Department of Social Development, 13.1% of government's overall estimated budget of the 1.957 trillion. Could it be that a caring government is looking after the best interests of its people? No. Could it be that government is, through this vote, fulfilling the vote's purpose to, and I'm quoting, to ensure protection against vulnerability by creating and enabling an environment for the provision of a comprehensive, integrated and sustainable social development service, close quote? No. The irony is the fact that government created circumstances through legislation and regulations that guaranteed more individuals became vulnerable and dependent on the state. As alluded to in the minister's budget speech to the National Assembly, 248 billion of this budget, that is 99.6%, goes towards social grants to some 18 million beneficiaries on a monthly basis. Dit is waar, voorsitter, dat ouderdomspensioen deel
It's
van
true, Chairperson, that we have pension for the elderly, but this to a lesser extent.
This is not a social development. Government is merely providing slight relief for the pain that they caused. So wat 10.5 miljoen mense maak tans
About 10.5 million people who are depending on the 350 Rand grants. The government is bragging with this as if they are Mother Teresa, where they are actually Marie Antoinette. It doesn't make any sense. It is important that these issues are addressed and that we alleviate poverty and hunger, but we rather create poverty and a continued dependence on the state. The statistics put it very clearly that violence against women and children have also increased.
And poverty and hunger eradicated, if it was not for the selfish pride of some. How ironic, Chair, that the minister mentioned the following in a speech, an open quote, "I wish to reiterate our government's commitment to the readiness to fight crime syndicates and criminals who are defrauding the state," close quote. The minister has just to look to a left and a right to see members of her own party that are, as we speak, defrauding the country. A government that is supposed to be trusted with the well-being of the elderly, the young and the vulnerable, the hungry and the poor. Is dit die eienskappe van 'n regering wat werklik omgee, 'n regering wat deur regulasies veroorsaak het dat sowat 2.2 miljoen mense hul werke sedert 2020 verloor het? 'n Regering wat toegekyk het hoe skade aan skole gedurende die afgelope 2021 onrus plaasgevind van sowat 100 miljoen rand beloop het. Dit sluit skole uit wat sedert 2020 inperking geplunder, verbrand en verwoes was. Nou moet daarna hierdie selfde kinders wat daardeur geraak is, se welstand omgesien word. Is this a caring government that allows school feeding schemes to fail, resulting in an even greater stunting percentage among children? This budget allows for disabilities and foster care grants, but government's broken system results in escalating domestic violence and violence against women and children. Voorsitter, die antwoord oor hoekom die minister met die derde grootste begroting spog is hartverskeurend. Government created an environment that is conducive for social ills, poverty, hunger, and violence. They now ease the pain with grants, making more people dependent on the
is actually heartbreaking.
That is conducive for social ills, poverty, hunger, and violence. They now ease the pain with grants, making more people dependent on the state and are in effect buying votes from hungry eyes, broken families, and devastated unemployed masses. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll now invite KwaZulu-Natal MEC of Social Development, Honorable Khoza.
Albongwe salwa abafazi bethu, albongwe.
Greetings, Honorable Chairperson. Greetings to the Honorable Minister, Mamlindi Wezulu. Greetings to
the honorable members here, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to be participating in this debate, budget speech of 2022-2023, year of 19. We rise in this August House during the important month of June. This year marks 46 years since the 1976 student uprising. As we commemorate Youth Month, it is important to continue protecting our youth from social ills. And I'm pleased, Chair, that the minister's budget talks to the drug abuse, which is allocated a bigger chunk, which is the thing which affects most of our youth. So, as well as addressing unemployment. Chairperson, for the past years, we have been facing serious challenges with the COVID-19 outbreak. July 2021 unrest and floods that hit the province of KwaZulu-Natal. In all these disasters, Chair, we faced the department has been at the forefront to protect the livelihood of the citizens. On that note, we would like to give thanks to all donors and NGOs, unions, different provinces, churches, and the private sector, including global communities, who came on board to support us as a province during this time. The National Department of Social Development has stood with the province during this difficult time, and the minister channeled all the donations to the province to help the flood victims. Equally, we are more than grateful to SASSA for their efforts in ensuring that the people have food and stretching their normal intervention, SRD, to provide a once-off grant of over 1,980 for SRD to the victims of floods. Thanks for grants, donations received from all provinces such as Gauteng, Free State, and Limpopo, from private donors, while others were brought directly to the government. The intervention of the different departments, including SAPS and SANDF, Western Cape and Mpumalanga, which were tasked with the rescue mission, also performed exceptionally well to find the bodies of the deceased from debris. Sadly, we recorded over 435 people who lost their lives, and reported missing. A total of 928,740 the DDM model works as all spheres of government work together and roped in all stakeholders. In all temporary shelters for displaced people, we have ensured that every person gets 3 meals a day. For us to meet the demand, all the vulnerable people, we need more funding for SRD as well as shelters. And the disasters exposed us and exposed our vulnerability as KZN, especially when it comes to social workers. We had to look for social workers from less affected districts. The department is currently moving away from its welfarist approach. We all need to understand that the department has a responsibility to respond correctly to the plight of the people at all times. Hence, the importance to move towards the developmental approach. The department has been doing very well in extending help to those engulfed in poverty. A big portion of the department's budget is channeled towards disbursement of social grants because we are a caring government. We are grateful that there has been an extension of the special COVID-19 SRD grant for 1 year, distributed over 10.5 million eligible persons monthly. As we know, COVID-19 brought more challenges to our people and created a lot of unemployment. The provision of different grants to our vulnerable people continues to contribute meaningfully towards poverty reduction and ensure that no person sleeps on an empty stomach. We have seen fast-growing trends of crime syndicates and criminals who were defrauding grants, but it was pleasing to learn from the Honorable Minister that systems are
One
in
of those
place.
syndicates are sitting in Lutuli House.
No. No, Honorable MEC, we are protected. Honorable Lord, no. Continue, Honorable MEC.
It was pleasing to learn from the Honorable Minister that systems are in place to ensure we fight any form of corruption. Equally, we are pleased that the department has also set a clear programs and allocated a budget to fight against illicit drugs and substance abuse in our society. Illicit drugs have destroyed a number of our youth and families. The number of cases of gender-based violence and femicide are linked to the use of drugs. We are pleased the department continues to play an important role in the implementation of strategies to end EGBV. It must be stated that the success to end the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide is the responsibility of us all as members of the society. We welcome and appreciate the path of reconstruction and recovery taken by the ANC government to ensure the economy performs better following the disasters we had to endure. We want to thank the Honorable Minister for delivering a comprehensive budget vote 19 of the Department of Social Development for the 2022-2023 financial years. The ANC mandated us to respond with a solution to better the lives of the people. During this difficult time, we need to work together as South Africans to build this overarching country's identity. Honorable Chairperson, we need not be ambiguous about the challenges we face, including teenage pregnancy, gender-based violence cases, and other social ills that need the department to employ more social workers. We have a lot of graduate social workers who are still at home unemployed. We also need to see our sister departments coming on board by recruiting social workers, departments like education and community safety. We have seen social development employees showing an undisputable dedication to serving our people, and the achievement in the 7th National Batupile Excellence Award speaks volumes about the jobs done by social development in communities. Renowned American philosopher Albert Green Hubbard said, and I quote, "A little more persistence, a little more effort, and what seemed hopeless failure may turn to glorious success." This is befitting of close quotes, and this is befitting of this situation faced by social development with this little budget we are debating today, which is too little. It is really too little when you look at what is a responsibility for social development. Through social development, this government remains the hope of hopeless. We have no doubt that something good out of the budget will restore hope to the hopeless. We thank the Honorable Minister and her entire team for their relentless effort to the realization of the department's mandate and to ensure that no vulnerable person is left behind. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable MEC. Thank you, Mama. I now invite Honorable Hatebe.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Honorable MECs. In an ideal world, the Department of Social Development should play a central role in uplifting and improving the lives of South Africa's citizens, especially the most vulnerable. Instead, as one reads through the Portfolio Committee's report on the department's budget and annual performance plan, one is confronted by a terrifying laundry list of concerns. And these are not just the committee's concerns. The Auditor General identified findings in multiple areas of concern, including financial management, procurement and contract management, compliance management, and more. These are just for the Department of Social Development. At one of its entities, SASSA, which is tasked with the management of billions of rands in taxpayers' monies meant for the alleviation of extreme poverty through mechanisms such as the many grants it provides, the AG identified material irregularities. In just one example listed, non-compliance also resulted in a material financial loss of 74 million for SASSA. Further, according to the report, in 2021, over 200 million was lost on the payment of social relief of distress, 350 rand, grant to ineligible beneficiaries, and payments were made to ineligible individuals due to inadequate internal controls. And let us talk about these grants. In South Africa, a country with the highest unemployment rate in the world, grants are a necessity, not an accomplishment. For the government to boast about a welfare state where 50% of South Africans survive on a grant alone is nothing more than an attempt by the ruling party to create a success story out of what is essentially the management of the poverty of our people. The IFP reiterates our desperate plea to the minister to table an urgent plan of action to address her department's weaknesses, the AG's findings, a plan to enforce a culture of consequence management, and a plan to intensify the fight against fraud and corruption. The department cannot afford to fail. The lives of too many people rely on it. It is for this reason, Honorable Chairperson, but with great reluctance, that the IFP accepts the budget vote. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Hadebe. Northwest MEC Social Development, Honorable Moilwa. Honorable Moilo.
As Chairperson, I'm advised Honorable Moilo is not in the House.
No, thank you, Advocate. We'll now move straight and invite the next speaker, which is Honorable Baha. Honorable Baha.
Masbulele Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, and honorable minister, there is now a broader agreement that extreme poverty and inequality can lead to future episodes of damaging instability. The debate around additional financial support is moving on from whether it needs to be implemented to how the country and the government will do it. Some argue for a basic income grant, while the finance minister has reiterated that he would rather expand measures than encourage employment, such as youth employment, subsidies, and public works. South Africa has over 10 million young people aged 15 to 24 years. And of these, only 2.5 million were in the labor force, either employed or unemployed. The largest share, 75.1% of this group of young people, are those that are out of the labor force. The main reason for being inactive is discouragement, namely, they have lost hope of finding a job that suits their skills or in the area they reside. The hard lockdown made things much worse as tax revenues plunged, while health and social assistance spending increased. Need I mention that corruption also took a toll from those that only thought of themselves, even in the face of a dire dilemma to many South Africans. In 21-22, we have seen our country go through a shocking time in history with COVID-19, the unrest in some of the provinces, and the recent floods in KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, and Northwest Province. These have certainly had a huge and negative impact on social well-being of South Africans as it affected lives and livelihoods and destroyed many business entities. Minister, this department is the heart and soul of stability to the poorest of the poor. Therefore, there can be no room for errors, as that will go down in history harshly. Minister, corruption and fraudulent activities by some of the officials in your department cannot and should not be tolerated. We are dealing with people in people's lives here, and therefore you should uproot every ounce of corruption, as it causes a severe burden to the poor and needy that depends on these grants for a living. The government has long promised to address its rising debt burden by slowing spending and raising tax revenue, but this has proven difficult, as we witness on a daily basis the cost of living reaching an impossible rate to adhere to. Never before was the gap wider between announcements of relief from hunger and starvation for millions in South Africa and the actual fulfillment of those announcements. The Honorable President announced in February this year that the SRD grant of 350 would be extended to March 2023. Today, no less than 10 million hungry would be beneficiaries have not seen a cent of the grant. Add to the basic food basket increases over the immediate past, according to the Household Food Index by Peter Marisburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. Around this time last year, a food basket cost 4,137 Rand 11 cents. Fast forward to May this year, the same food basket had increased to 4,609 Rand 89 cents. The lack of caring for the people by this government is outstanding, given the hardships they experience daily. First, it was the appeals that date back to August 2021 that have not been paid. Then it was the closure of post offices that led to beneficiaries traveling long distance to receive their grants, and then the delay in paying the inadequate 350 rands. While these gaps continue to widen, heart-wrenching reports pop up every day of children dying of acute malnutrition. It is for this reason, Honorable Chairperson, that the Democratic Alliance is calling for clarity on the actual date the grant will be paid and the back pay for the month that have lapsed. A caring government would do all it takes to ensure that so many people, at the very least, are able to keep hunger and starvation at bay. If it cannot restore their dignity and protect their lives and livelihoods. The current ANC government certainly does not care. Every month, vulnerable South Africans struggle to access their grants due to a technical glitch, system crashes, and changes in grant qualifications requirements. Millions of South Africans rely on these grants to support their families. And every month, there's uncertainty on whether their grants will be disbursed and accessed on time. Reports have highlighted that the technical errors on SASSA's side resulted in dates changing from the 3rd to the 2nd of June. As a result, funds are unavailable. This has left many pensioners waiting for their disbursements. Minister, this department is the integral part of our society during and post-COVID-19, as we have seen the trauma caused by the pandemic. The department has a burden to mother the orphans and vulnerable children. Due to COVID-19, it has the responsibility to provide hope to the hopeless with mental support and forging a stable pathway through all the darkness we have endured. This department has an obligation to lessen the burden by all means possible. Therefore, Honorable Minister, it is time to deliver a service that will give South Africans hope, as enshrined in the Constitution of our beautiful country. The right to dignity, right to security and identity is preserved in a stable social environment. Let us deliver. In conclusion, Chairperson, Minister, this department is what South Africans rely on to gain a glimpse of hope through everything we have been through. Monitoring and evaluation is crucial to make sure that we provide South Africans the democracy they fought and died for. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Baha. The next speaker is Honorable Nchabeleng. Honorable Nchabeleng.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. My reception is not very stable. May I switch my video off? Maybe it will improve.
No, you can switch it.
If it pleases the House.
Yeah, you can switch it for the sake of you to present your speech.
Yeah, thanks a million. Honorable Minister, the Chair of the House now, top management of the NCOP, honorable members, special delegates, MECs present, and my MEC from Limpopo, Mera Khwale. The minister, as I was listening to this debate, it really makes it very difficult to comment on some of the remarks that people are throwing at this budget vote. There's a lot of concentration on things that did not go well, kind of, instead, and a lot of focus is left on the positive things that this department has done since you took over the office. Since you came into this office, Honorable Minister and members, we all know, as we engaged with this committee, with the department, that there'd been improvement in management and even in the performance at the audit levels compared to the past years. So we are fully behind you. We know that you're going to turn this department around and ensure that whatever negative comments that comes from the AG's reports will be rectified. I have confidence in you, and so do the people of South Africa. Honorable Chairperson, the African National Congress rises to express its support for the budget vote 19 on social development that has been presented by the Honorable Minister Lindiwe Zulu. In our view, the proposed budget is outlined is reflective of the aspirations that the ANC has for social transformation in South Africa. These are aspirations that are anchored on our commitment to address the injustices of the past, specifically as it relates to the development of the people of South Africa. The African National Congress remains committed to the vision of building a national democratic society that is democratic, non-sexist, non-racial, and prosperous. This envisaged society is one that carries the aspirations of social and economic freedoms for all South Africans. The future that we want to see in the country is one that is significantly different from that of previous regimes that sought to deliberately isolate Africans and was disparaging towards women, youth, and other marginalized groups. In this regard, the budget vote 19 as presented cuts across a number of issues that are critical for the developmental agenda of the country. Some of these issues include, but are not limited to, strengthening partnerships and the social compact, expanding the district development model, improving governance, and addressing the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide. Building a capable developmental state means that we need to ensure that our government institutions have the adequate human capacity and the resource capacity to efficiently and effectively deliver on its mandate within the parameters of the law in an ethical manner. The question of our moral fiber and the importance of the moral regeneration program demonstrate that our government systems and the services provided by our government will always be impacted by different vested interests, which can be legal or illegal. It is therefore critical that the department responds to all findings which the Auditor General has made. Consequence management on findings which warrant decisive action should be a norm in the state in order to ensure our people get value for their money. We must ensure that government expenditure is optimal. Looking at social compact, the National Development Agency chair has been allocated 219 million rand that is targeted at alleviating poverty and addressing food insecurity in communities, more especially given the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. This has displaced many families and left millions of people in economically compromised positions where they are unable to afford and sustain their livelihoods. The particular area of opportunity for partnerships and building a social compact in this regard lies in the department's capacity to empower civil society organizations with both financial and educational capacity to serve communities in collaboration with the government. This proposed budget commits to strengthening governance and accountability of community of CSOs through providing financial and management skills, sound and ethical management of community organizations that are funded by the government are important for improving governance, and the budget allocation towards this end that are provided in the budget book 19 is notable. The budget creates a platform for the department to leverage other social partners in the private sector and academia, thus creating a platform for robust and multidisciplinary approaches to implementing the mandate of the department. The district development model, as spearheaded from the presidency, is aimed at strengthening the coordination and integration of the planning and budgeting of government programs at a district-based level. As this relates to the delivery of the social services, it is necessary that low-hanging fruits be identified in implementation of the pilot areas and efforts be strategically channeled towards the success of these pilots in order to establish a baseline that can be used for the expansion of the program. Within the department, there are various areas of intersection with strategic goals in other departments, such as basic education and the ministry in the presidency for women, youth, and persons with abilities that should be looked at to better enhance the case for the broad implementation of this model. Honorable Chairperson, it should also be noticed that the improvement of governance system is not an operation that occurs in silos, spearheaded by specific units and subunits in departments. It is critical that there exists an appreciation of how improving governance calls for the introduction of a knowledge sharing system approach to be adopted and implemented by the departments across all spheres of governance and other relevant stakeholders. It is significant that the department has allocated 125 million rands towards strengthening the operations of the South African Council for Social Services Professions in order to enhance its capacity to carry out its mandate. The budget allocation shows that the department is serious about maintaining professionalism in the social services profession sector. This is important in this broader developmental discourse and the transformation agenda of the nation. The social services professionals are the anchor of the work that the department undertakes. This being so, however, we acknowledge that within the profession, there exist multiple barriers of opportunity, especially for young professionals from historically Black institutions, as it refers to them being channeled into the profession. The department's role is that critical to ensure that the required support for social services professionals is provided. It is certainly unfortunate that the scourge of violence against women and children remains one of the most persistent challenges that have plagued this country over the years. The report of the Presidential Summit Against Gender-Based Violence is a useful tool in shaping interventions aimed at curbing this. The department's role through the National Development Agency is one that aims to provide the required social support for victims of gender-based violence across the length and breadth of the country. It is important that as a nation, we root out this scourge that has destroyed and taken the lives of many women and children. The department's continued support of the services provided through the commitment to working with the Department of Public Works in order to repurpose state-owned facilities into Kuseleka one-stop centers is commendable. It is, however, important to note that while the targeted interventions are significant, it is even more important to recognize that the level of gender-based violence in South Africa are an anomaly, and that much more community-led interventions are required. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, allow me to conclude my contribution by making acknowledgement of the historic relevance of the month of June to our beloved nation. Although the years have gone by and the ANC government has made concerted efforts towards a just transition from the atrocious regimes of the past, it is impossible that the significance of June 16 to the nation will ever be eroded, even amongst the narratives spread by some amongst us about the insignificance of our history today. Of course, they won't appreciate that because some of them were sellouts during those days, or they're on the other side. We were at the wrong side of the gun. The gun was in their hands. Truly, the journey we have traveled as a nation is long. As some of the interventions highlighted in the proposed budget vote suggest the legacy of apartheid policies is that they have entrenched inequality and made the implementation of progressive efforts towards justice and social cohesion extremely difficult. In our commemoration of Youth Month under the theme code, promoting sustainable livelihoods and resilience of young people for a better tomorrow, close quote, it is important that government in its clarion call to the youth to forge resilience and pursue opportunities for a sustainable livelihood today and in the future. Equally provides the necessary support in order to ensure that this idea comes alive and doesn't merely remain as a slogan that does not bear any fruit for the current and future generations. It is indeed the responsibility of the youth of this generation to follow in the assertion made by Frantz Fanon in The Wretched of the Earth, I quote, "Out of their relative obscurity, discover their mission and chooses to fulfill or betray it." Those are the young people of our country, Chairperson. And with these words, as a representative of the African National Congress, I move for the adoption of the budget vote 19 as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nchabeleng. I'll now invite the Honorable Minister of Social Development, Honorable Zulu, to conclude the debate. Honorable Zulu.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for that opportunity. Firstly, I must thank all the honorable members from the ANC across to the IFP who supported the budget, and indicate, Chairperson, that we hear them because they not only just supported, but they also had issues they raised which are of concern to them, and especially the issue of the NDA, I fully agree that the budget allocated is not adequate, and therefore we will continue to work towards galvanizing support for the NDA beyond our own budget. I also wish to thank all the MECs who participated here today, and in particular the ones who supported the budget, and indicate, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, that these MECs are people that I work very well with, and I regard them as the people who I must always talk to and always engage with, because they are at the coal face of where our people live. For us, we are at national and we focus on policy and other issues, but when we are bringing projects and programs down on the ground, we depend very much on the MECs. I also want to indicate that the government of South Africa is one that is supposed to create a conducive environment for our people so that they can be able to either have jobs or create jobs for themselves. And we work with a whole number of people outside who are in the NPOs and NGOs who are really doing a whole lot of good work in supporting us. Our task is to continue to do this, and the series of investment conferences, the ERRP, and putting South Africa to work answers to some of the questions that were raised here about the issue of South Africa being, we are creating a dependency state. I don't know where some of these people live, because if the social grants were not paid to the elderly, to the children, to the people with disability, all the grants that we are paying, imagine that if these grants were not being paid, where would these people be? We are not saying that this is enough. We know that we need to move beyond the issue of just paying the social grants, but also it is our responsibility to encourage young people in particular to get jobs where they can, and appreciating and understanding that the jobs are not available right now. We cannot leave our people in hunger. And therefore, to the opposition parties, it's a pity I just have to lump you all in one for those that did not support, because I know the IFP did support. I think it has to be understood that the Department of Social Development has got programs where we deal with the issues of poverty and unemployment, poverty in particular. That is why we have the CNDCs, Community Nutrition Development Centers, we have drop-in centers, we have Risiha program, we have home-based care. There's a whole number of programs that we have. And the unfortunate thing about the opposition is that we plead with you. You need to be constructive. The reason why we, those of us who contributed towards building this South Africa that we have and the institutions that we have today, basically we said, despite all the pain, despite all the things that you did to us, we needed to include you to be part and parcel of South Africa. But if we are going to continue not to even bother to listen at us when we are presenting, I presented a budget and I meticulously went through where the money is going to. And members of the opposition come here with already prepared speech and they didn't even bother to listen to what we are saying. We are pleading with you. You are part and parcel of South Africa. We have embraced you. Embrace us too. And also understand that in governance, there will be mistakes that will be made. And in that, we need to correct those mistakes. So you must be constructive. And when you listen to the EFF, for instance, the honorable member, I can just only say to you, do the honorable thing. Get your facts right. Go and read. If it's not what is in the speech, it is there. Almost 13 million children get child support grant. Just over 7 million caregivers. In the budget, I clearly indicated what money goes where. And as for the Honorable FF Plus, you see, it's easy for you to talk about dependency, the same thing as Honorable MEC Fernandez said. We pay grants not because we believe South Africans cannot do things for themselves. We pay the grants because the system created a situation where our people had nothing to start with. Even when we started in 1994, we made sure that the grants are paid to everybody. And by the way, we don't even discriminate. Who are you, what color you are, where you live. As long as you qualify for the grant, we pay the grant to all. So when people talk about state dependency, we are where we are because Black people in the majority never had the opportunity of creating a good environment for themselves, and therefore the responsibility of this government, these social grants are the main source of income. And you know very well that when you go to your constituencies, you know that in almost each and every home you go to, particularly Black homes, you will find that is the grandmother, the grandfather, the children, they are all dependent on social grant. And as long as the economy is not growing in the manner in which it is growing, it is our responsibility as a government to support our people. And also, DA, please, can I just remind you about your own policies, that you do not support minimum wage as agreed at NEDLAC, and you are determined by the wage commissioner. Instead, you are proposing an opt-out. Now, for me, it's like, where do you live? You must go to the communities. Go and see what is happening in the communities. And once you know that, you will not say what you say. Also, the basic income grant. The basic income grant. Now everybody is jumping up and down about the basic income grant. It is this government of the African National Congress that started the debate about the basic income grant. It is this government of the ANC that has come back with the basic income grant. And I know some others are fighting it outside and saying it mustn't happen. Where must people go? This government is responsible, must take responsibility and support our people. I thank you very much, Chairperson, for your patience.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. That concludes the debate. Honorable members, allow me to take this opportunity to thank the Minister of Social Development, Honorable Zulu, Deputy Minister, all MEC, all members who participated in this very important debate. With that, honorable members, that concludes the business of the day. The House is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Chief Whip.
Long live the chair, long live.
Mama.
Long live
Love
the
you,
chair,
Mama.
long live.
Recording stopped.